waving at him. And he goes, do you live here? I said, yeah. He goes, can you come down here right now and open this door? I said, yeah, did you guys ring the bell? And he goes, did you ring the bell? And then suddenly somebody steps out in the street. It's another cop. And he goes, no, I didn't ring the bell. Come down right now. And I was like, okay. And so I back away from the window, and I'm like, there's a fucking cop out there yelling at me and shit. Maybe it ain't so creepy to look out the windows every once in a while. And she's like, a cop? What are you talking about? And fucking like, I don't know. There's a cop. He wants me to come down and shit. I had just ordered Baja Fresh. I picked it up as well, Baja Fresh, Mexican place and whatnot. Harley had just returned home with her 2 friends. They'd gone to the movies with Raina. So I came back with Baja Fresh for everybody and shit. And those cops scared me. But I was like, shit, I got to seem cool because I'm really fucking stoned right now. So I want to seem cool and calm and casual, so I pick up a container of chicken and bring it with me. Nothing wrong could be going on if this man's holding a container of chicken, I just want to seem casual as possible, throw on my robe, grab the chicken and shit, go open the door, and there's Harley's 2 friends standing in our doorway going like, the police are pointing at us in the window and going like this. Should we climb out the windows? I was like, not yet, hold on. Let's find out. And Jen's going, well, out the windows. We go downstairs and shit. Get to the top of the steps. There's about 4 or 5 steps descend to our front door and shit in the foyer and whatnot. And as I'm getting to the front door, Raina's emerging from the garage. And Raina's English is like broken at best, to say the least. I was like, Raina, what did the cops want? She goes, it's okay, Mr. Kevin, it's okay. And I was like, what the fuck's that mean, man? So anyway, Raina said it was okay, must be okay and shit. So I go to open the door. Behind me is my wife, my child, her 2 friends, and Raina at the top of the steps. And as I open the door, the first thing I see are 2 of LA's finest in blues go like this. Hand on their hip, the little latch thing that keeps your gun open. And one hand extended out to me, and the guy's going, how many people in the house? And I go, oh shit, like I didn't know there was gonna be math on the quiz. I said, let me see, there's me, there's my wife, there's Harley, her 2 friends, Raina right now, I think there's 6 in the house. He's like, come outside, can you step outside right now, please? I said, yeah, totally. And we come outside, and he's like, can you step over here, please? I said, yeah, and they're separating the kids from us. And my kid starts getting really emotional. She's like, what's going on? And I was like, I don't know, I'm sure everything's fine. He's like, what's going on, hon? Are you okay? Are you upset? What's the matter with these people? And I'm like, these people? What are you talking about? And then one cop comes up to me. He's like, we got a call for an emergency. Somebody was calling for help inside the house, that they were being held hostage. And I was like, you're kidding me, man. No. I said, I just literally went and got Baja Fresh. You could see I'm holding chicken. I said, the kids, they just got back from seeing a movie and shit. I don't know who would have made the call. And I immediately turned to the kids, you fucking call the cops. And one of the kids, not my kid, who was falling to pieces and shit, the other girl was like, no way, man, we would never do that. I'm serious. We have nothing to do. Like, she could see that I was like, this better not be a fucking joke. The cops are here. And she's like, no, we didn't. I was like, officer, they said they didn't call the cops. I didn't call the cops. My wife didn't call the cops. Raina didn't call the cops. Like, nothing. We're the only ones here. And then another cop comes over and goes, it didn't come from inside the house. Somebody was walking down your hill. They heard somebody expressly screaming for help, and they called us, and that's why we're here. Now, what's going on in there? And I go, wait, somebody outside the house? He goes, yeah. I go, are you guys looking for the fucking Gecko brothers by any chance? And he goes, what are you talking about? And I was just like, guys, I have a 103-inch television, man, and it's very fucking loud. And I was talking to my wife, I was showing her the opening from Dusk Till Dawn, and that is a hostage situation with gunplay and people screaming for help and shit like that. And the older cop turns to the younger cop, he goes, is this true? And the younger cop goes, yeah, it was the best part of the movie, boss. Ladies and gentlemen, Kevin Smith! Hi! Thank you. Thank you. All right, thank you. Gets annoying after a while, stop it. No, I'm kidding, man. I fucking crave that shit. That's what allows me to sleep at night. Here, remembering a reaction that big. An audience welcome that nice just reminds me that I'm not too fat to be loved. This is awesome. 40 years ago tonight, ladies and gentlemen, in this very town, Red Bank, New Jersey, the cradle of civilization, I was brought into this world. Some say shat into existence. Thank you very much. And the lovely woman who was responsible for that is here tonight. Without her, I couldn't stand up here and talk. I would just be a rotten cum stain in my father's very old drawers. 41-year-old drawers by now, man. Fuck you. She likes it when people like me. Don't go boo. Ladies and gentlemen, without this woman, I couldn't be up here ever, and it is a real privilege to introduce you tonight to the woman 40 years ago put me here. Ladies and gentlemen, Grace Smith, my mom. As the only woman on the planet who I have ever made go, ow. You know what I mean? Okay. She likes that. She likes when people like her son and shit. I think she was always like, man, one day my own baby boy is gonna soar with the eagles. And then one day she was like, nope, he's too fat to fly. So, yeah, fuck them. Not fuck Southwest. I've actually come to a place of peace with Southwest to some degree. I mean, as most of you know, I ran into some trouble with the airlines, at least recently, and because of that, I decided to stop flying. I kind of got divorced from the sky, and I took the land, where I just roam forever in a bus, from place to place, like the Incredible Hulk and shit, you know. Whenever I get on the bus and stuff, I look back at my family, wave as I get on, I press a tape, and it goes dun 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 dun, and they both tear rolls down their cheeks, and they're like, if only he could get on an airplane. I bought a bus and shit like that, and it wasn't a hasty decision that I came to. It kind of came after, you know, flying wasn't an option. Ran into trouble on Southwest Air, some people may have heard, and problem with it was I had a bunch of gigs like this, being up on a stage, coming up right around that period of time. So I was like, man, how am I supposed to get from place to place if I'm not gonna fly? And I didn't want to fly because a friend of mine had said, you gotta check out this website. And it was a paparazzi website. And the website, there was a thread on it, and it was talking about me, you know, because all that shit happened, too fat to fly, blah, blah, blah. There was a bounty out for a picture of me, which I was like, what the fuck? What kind of picture? And the picture they described was, get this fat fuck in a little chair. That was valued at $5,000. Then under it, there was another picture, $10,000 if you get him in a little chair eating a big sandwich. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I like to eat. When I go to the airport, I sit in little chairs. And when I sit in little chairs, goddamn it, I eat big sandwiches. So I was like, I'm not going to give that to them. I ain't going to give it to them anymore, man. I'm not going to go near the fucking airport and shit like that. Although I did think briefly about taking my own picture because I could get a picture, man. I could do that. I could totally set up like a Peter Parker kind of thing. You know, like he'd fucking set the camera up, then dress up as Spidey and be like, ah, you know, and then sell the fucking picture to J. Jonah Jameson, who's like, I hate you, Parker, but god damn it, you get the good pictures and shit. So I could have made $15K pretty easy and shit, but I was like, you know what? I'd like to hold on to my dignity a little longer, or at least hold out until $50K or something like that. So I was like, I'm not gonna do that. I gotta find an alternate mode of transportation. I was trying to think of how to do it, and I remembered that during the shooting of Cop Out, which was like last summer this time, I ran into a similar kind of cross-country problem where I had to get somebody and get somewhere, and flying was not an option. We were shooting Cop Out, late night sequence, Friday night, and I had to get up to Toronto, Ontario, specifically Brantford, Ontario, to go to the Walter Gretzky street hockey tournament. Now, I hadn't played street hockey in about 15 years. I hadn't been between the pipes in about 15 years, and not because, like, man, I was so good when I retired, you know, it was... I hadn't done it, it'd been quite a while, and I wanted to go in a big bad way. Unfortunately, it was happening while we were making the shoot. But I was like, it's fucking Cop Out. It directs itself. Let's go. So I told everyone, I was like, I'm going to go up to Brantford, play hockey. And, you know, the producers on the movie, I just met some of them. It was a brand new production. They're like, what? I was like, yeah, I'm going up to Brantford to play in a hockey tournament. They're like, what do you play? You play sports? And I was like, yes, as a matter of fact, I'm a goalie. And they're like, oh, that makes sense. They're like, anything get past you? I was like, no, you think I'm that good? They're like, just that wide. You're a filler, aren't you? And I said, yeah, and I'm going to go up and have a good time. And Warner Brothers, the studio, got in touch with me because it was their movie, and they're like, for insurance purposes, we can't let you leave the set, go to a foreign country, and have balls thrown at your face. And I was like, why? Affleck does that all the time. Such a weak joke. So I was like, look, I'm doing this, man. I'm feeling this. This hockey thing is something I really gotta fucking do. And so I'm gonna go up there. And so like, all right, we don't know about it. Just do it without us knowing. I said, fine. And we had arranged to fly, because I was flying in those days, but unfortunately we were going late on the shoot and whatnot. And I was like, fuck, man, we're not gonna make our flight. And Malcolm, my friend Malcolm Ingram, who's a filmmaker as well, and he's been my friend for many years, one of my dearest friends actually, he usually comes and hangs out whenever I make a movie. And he comes for a visit, generally speaking. He'll be like, I'm gonna come up for a few days. I'm like, all right, and then he stays till the end of the show. But I like him to be there because he's kind of like my Guy Friday and shit like that, and he'll hang out with me. He's kind of like a paid friend on set. So he'll hang out throughout the whole show, and he was hanging out with me, and kind of I was leaning on him throughout, and I was like, Malcolm, I don't know how we're gonna get up there, man. We're not gonna make it. We're gonna shoot late tonight. Last flight out's fucking 10 o'clock. We're screwed. He's like, all right, let's think about this, man. What about a boat? And I was like, well, we could leave New York. I don't know how we'd get to Brantford. It's landlocked. He's like, well, they got pools there. I said, dig deeper, Malcolm. And he goes, well, what if we just rented a car, man, and drove up? And I was like, if I drive up, man, how am I supposed to play in the morning? Like, first game was like noon or 1 or something. And he's going, good point. He's going, well, what if we rent like an SUV and some guy can drive us up and shit like that? And I was like, all right, yeah, maybe that's the move and shit. We can kind of sleep in the back. And he goes, oh, wait, fuck that. He's going, I got a better idea, SUV. I was like, what? He's going, what about a prom bus? And I said, what do you mean? What's a prom bus? And he's going, you never seen one of these things? Oh, it's amazing. It's shaped like a tart cart. And I was like, I'm familiar with those. He's going, this is amazing. The kids, they take it to the prom. They all pile in. It's this little bus. It's got all sorts of lights on it and shit like that. Chaser lights, stripper lights. There's a stripper pole. You're blasting music. It's a good time from the moment you step on board. And I was like, what, you see this in a movie? He's like, yeah, that seemed really fun. So I said, all right, that's I guess a possibility. He's going, think about it, dude. It's big enough, like a tart cart with 2 dudes in it. That's it. Like, somebody will be driving. We'll have all the room in the back. They got TVs. We could bring a video game and play it and shit. I was like, all right, man, you sold me. We'll fucking prom bus it up to Toronto and shit. But let's try to keep it on the down low. You know what I'm saying? Let's just try to pick me up after the show's done. We'll leave straight from set, but pick me up 2 streets over and shit. He's like, yeah, I totally will and shit. And I said, do me a favor, man. If we're going to be sleeping on it, you should grab some pillows. Here's some money. Go out to, like, Target, if you will. Grab some stuff to lay on and sleep on. He's going, yeah, good point, man, good point. He's going, what about body pillows? And I was like, body pillows? He's like, oh, yeah, you don't know what a body pillow is? I said, no. He's going, it's a pillow. It's about the size of a human being. And you get in bed and you can cuddle with it. Put a leg over it. I said, well, I got a wife, so I don't really need a body pillow. I do the same thing her. He's going, oh, it's a comfy thing. You'll like it. You're going to want a body pillow. I was like, all right, Malcolm, grab a body pillow if you must. He's like, what style? I was like, what do you mean, what style? He's like, what design you looking at? I said, dude, I don't care. He's like, what about when we're done? I was like, do you think I'm going to keep the fucking sheets and blankets and fucking pillows that were laying on the floor of the prom bus, dude? Do you know what's on the floor of a prom bus? Like fucking dry jizz, broken promises, dignity, like... I said, no. I said, the shit we buy, we can leave on the bus. And he's like, so you don't want it? And I was like, Malcolm, pick out whatever you want. He's like, okay, I'm on it. And I trust Malcolm. Malcolm is one of my closest friends, but not only that, Malcolm is what they refer to as a bear in the gay community. I know that because he tells me all the time, I'm a bear. And I'm like, I'm a wolf. Bear, as Malcolm described it to me in the gay community, he was so excited when he first told me about it and shit. Dude called me up and he's like, I'm a bear. I was like, what do you mean? He's like, I found my place in the world, I'm a bear. I was like, what is it? And he's like, a bear is someone who looks like you but get laid a lot. With guys. And I was just like, get out of here. He's like, yeah, I'm a bear, you're a bear. Bear, apparently, this dude who does look like me. Large, sometimes rotund, usually kind of hairy, facial hair to some degree. And he's like, and guess what our boyfriends are called? I was like, what? He goes, cubs. Isn't that cute? He's going, I'm a bear and my boyfriend would be a cub. And I was like, I like that. I guess that's kind of cool. What's it like out there? He's like, it's amazing, dude. He's going, oh, you have no idea. He's going, I walk into the right bar, I'm Marilyn fucking Monroe. I was like, what do you mean? He's like, because they love the fat in the bear community. These cubs, they come for the fat, man. It's like the honey pot. I was like, what do you mean? He's like, that's what they're all about. He's going, they don't detest fat, they love fat. And I was like, nobody loves fat. He's going, these fucking crazy people do. He's going, it's insane, dude. They like the fat to be used in the sex and shit. He's going, I bet you fucking never take your shirt off while you're fucking. I was like, Malcolm, I don't take my shirt off in the shower. For fear that I might catch a glimpse at one of my boobs, you know? And he's going, oh, this place you take it all off because the fat's a part of it. I was like, what do you mean? He's like basically I got a cub down here sucking my dick, right? And I'm like, yeah, say it quieter and softer, would you? He's like, I got a cub down here sucking my dick, and what I do is I take my gut and I lay it on his head gently. And I start rubbing his head back and forth with it. So, I mean, the effect of it is kind of something akin to this. You know what I'm saying? He's just rubbing his head back and forth. I said, get out of here. He said, oh, they love it. And you talk to him and shit, and you tell him, like, do you like that fat? I love chocolate. You work it in. He's like, they like to be reminded of the lard. I said, get out of here. He's like, oh, and it's the best when you finish. I said, how do you finish? He's going, just when I know I'm about to come, I pick up my gut, drop it on his fucking head. I said, Malcolm, I'm so glad you found love, you know? He's going, fuck you, it's awesome. This is the most amazing thing ever. And Malcolm's the guy that'll come back and teach me all sorts of gay terminology and whatnot. Like after he educated me about the bears, he'd come back and be like, do you know what they call a bear who lives in Alaska? A polar bear. You know, and then he's like, you know what they call one in Japan? A panda bear, you know. And so he would do that and continuously update me and whatnot. He's always been good like that. Malcolm, aside from being one of my closest friends, is also what I consider my gay avatar. You know what I'm saying? He's the dude that he goes out into the world and interacts with all the blue cats, comes home, gives me the data. I'm like, right on, you know, as I try to understand the gay community even better. So, as my gay avatar, the dude is usually also the idea man. The idea in this case is the prom bus. So, I'm on the set. It's late Friday night, last summer, shooting Cop Out. We're shooting a sequence with Bruce and Tracy. Bruce Willis, Tracy Morgan. We've sent the sound department home because there's no more dialogue left to be doing. It's just basically Bruce and Tracy trying to go into the villain's house, po' boy, and they're holding their guns and shit. It's just basically a bunch of non-dialogue oriented stuff. And I'm sitting there directing a scene, and how you direct movies is you sit behind a little monitor and watch them and then say cut and go over correct, then come back, watch it again. So essentially to make a movie, you just have to watch TV all the time. And I've had a lifetime of training for that. So you'd think I'd be a better director, but I'm not. So anyway, I'm sitting there kind of watching the little monitor, and Bruce and Tracy are kind of moving along with their guns in the air and shit like that. And we're shooting in Brooklyn, you know, and we've opened up the streets so people could go back and forth. So there's traffic, and I'm hearing traffic all the time and shit like that. So I don't register cars as they pull up, which was weird and sad because Bruce and Tracy did while we're making the movie. I'm watching the monitor, and I see Bruce and Tracy going like this. And I'm like, why are these guys breaking character? What the fuck are they looking at and shit? And I turn around, backing up, massive prom bus. So fucking huge, man. Had the big boop, boop, boop. I was backing up, but more than that, Malcolm had really decked it out to the fucking nines. It was like he got on and said, turn everything on. Because as it backed up, the fucking lights are blinking, chasing around the window. The stripper pole is wrapped with lights, and that's blinking. And according to the music, it don't mean nothing but a good time, you know? Malcolm thought we were going to the prom. So Bruce and Tracy are pointing and laughing, and I'm like, okay, cut. Let's cut. And I looked at that take. I was like, we're good. I think we're good for tonight. We should get out of here. Bruce and Tracy comes over. They're like, Kev, are you going to the prom tonight? I said, no, man, I'm just going up to Toronto. They're like, with who, your boyfriend? Oh, I said, what boyfriend? They're like, the one carrying all those pillows. So I'm just like, oh my God. Malcolm is pulling a fucking 7 large body pillows from the back of an SUV, loading them onto the back of the prom bus. And these fuckers are decked out with zebra stripes. One is hot pink, one's very purple. All the fucking linens match as well. And he's carrying with a huge smile. Puts them all up on the fucking bus. I bid adieu to the cast and everybody, assure the producers I'll be back for shooting on Monday and then I'll try not to get hurt or anything. Approach the bus. We had 2 drivers up front. And the drivers look at me and they have an expression. And I kind of recognize the expression, I think. And it's the expression people have when they're like, oh, it's that fucking guy. It's too fat to fly. But this was before that, so they didn't have that. So they were just like, oh, it's that fucking Silent Bob fucker or something like, oh, it's the Clerks guy or whatever. You know, and so they're looking at me, not saying anything. I give them the nod and shit like that and whatnot. And I move into the back of the cabin. And then I realized the look that they were giving me isn't, oh, that's Silent Bob. They were like, oh, that's the faggot that hired us. And I realized that because I went back and Malcolm had set the back of the bus up like a gay harem. all the pillows laying around, all the covers, blankets covering everything. The TV was playing pornography. And so those dudes weren't looking at me like, that's Silent Bob. They were looking at me like, these two gay sumo wrestlers are gonna fuck one another the whole ride up to Ontario. So we went, it was a pretty successful trip and shit. So months and months later, you know, Southwest Airlines thing happens. I'm like, fuck, I can't fly anymore. And then I was like, maybe I can cross the country in a prom bus and shit like that. And then I was like, that'd be so bumpy, because that ride seemed bumpy and shit. And I was like, not a prom bus. But then I was like, wait a second. If you do a bus, prom bus is just a rock star bus. It's just shorter. It's the miniature version. Why don't you do a tour bus, man? Like fucking a coal miner's daughter, you know? Or a more recent reference, the one that Jason Lee was in. What was it called, the movie? What was it? Almost Famous, like the Almost Famous tour bus and shit. So I looked it up online. It's amazing. Like, you can do anything in this world, man. I never thought, like, you could rent a tour bus and shit. I just looked it up. You could literally rent a tour bus. And I called them. I said, yeah, I would like to rent a tour bus. I got like 5 dates on the road, and basically I want to hit them and come back to Los Angeles. And the dude was like, how many people on the bus? I was just one. And there's a long beat, and he goes, are you that too fat to fly guy? I was like, no. And I tried to thin up when I responded. So I rented the bus, you know, and it was, made the transaction. It was all organized and shit like that. Couldn't wait to do it. Felt real chuffed with myself. Told the wife, I was like, guess who's renting a rock star tour bus? And she's like, fat piece of shit that won't fly. I said, yes, dear. You know. Then I went and cried. But I was so excited, but nobody was going to appreciate the bus as much as one other person on the planet. So I jumped online looking for Malcolm. He was on iChat, and I hit him up with a little iChat thing, and I was just like, guess how I'm getting to all my gigs? And I wait for his response. It takes him a long time to type and shit. And then he writes, prom bus? Question mark. And I write back, better! Exclamation point, you know. Bling, send, wait for him to fucking write back. And he writes, better than a prom bus? Many question marks. And I write back, huge caps, rock star tour bus, motherfucker, you know. And I'm waiting for the phone to immediately ring, you know. At that point, like, hello, get out of here, a rock star tour bus, can I go? You know. Didn't ring and shit. Wasn't responding. I was like, get out of here. How can you not find that fucking impressive and shit like that? And after about 5 minutes, suddenly his little icon lights up and shit like that. And he starts typing on the other side, and it takes him a long time to type. So I'm like, this is gonna be a book. My man is like, I've respected you for years, but this takes it to the next level, you know. A dissertation on me and the bus and shit like that. The message finally comes through after about 2 minutes of him typing, one word, genius. So that's how I arrived at the bus, and then like every other night and every other gig I do, I got here on the bus, and bus is just somewhere outside, and it's cool. I don't know, I kind of like it. It's neat. It's having like your own private train car. It's kind of like being in the Wild Wild West, the movie, the bad one, not the real. Always open up my bus window, and I'm like, it's a cool thing. You just sit there, driving and shit, go to sleep, smoke a joint, jerk off. Sometimes fuck your wife if she's there, you know. But then every once in a while, you're driving, you open up the window, you're like, Iowa. Close the window. Go back to all those things. Never get off the bus. A couple days later, open it up, Kansas. Close it. It's a pretty kind of cool, unique way to live, man. And Malcolm kind of gave it to me. This is kind of a gift. Southwest really gave it to me. Hard, up the ass. But it all worked out with the bus and whatnot. So that's how I got here, but I don't want to talk about my shit. I want to talk about your shit. We're going to talk about what you want to talk about tonight. And generally speaking, how I like to do these things is we open it up to the audience, as I'm sure many of you know. It's just Q&A, basically. I'm not a stand-up or anything like that. I just like to answer questions. And sometimes the answers tend to be a bit on the long side. But not tonight. Tonight we're keep shit short, tight, and moving on and shit. Try to get to as many questions as we can tonight. So, generally speaking, there are two mics. There's one here. There's one here to keep the clutter out of the aisles. We're just kind of letting a few people stand up, and then they'll bring them up as we continue and whatnot. So, mic, and then I'll hit that one. Where am I starting? This side, that side, this side? Okay, so basically I'll start there, jump over here. There's no mics upstairs or anything? No? No, right? Sorry. Cheap seats. All right, so we'll start there. And we're going to go over there and whatnot. And basically, it's up to you. We could talk about whatever you guys kind of want to talk about. That's the way I like to play the Q&A stuff. So how are you, sir? What's your name? Say your name, because we're going to talk to you for a little bit.
My name is Sean.
Sean, nice to meet you. Welcome, and thanks for doing the first question. Everyone give him a big round of applause.
Happy birthday, first off.
Thank you so much, Sean. Thank you, and thank you for setting the tone for this evening.
My question is, what was it like to...
Apparently you didn't set it very well.
Yeah, apparently.
You're like, me? Fuck that.
Yeah, thanks. What was it like to finally get to direct Bruce Willis? Or did he direct you?
Yeah, you don't direct Bruce Willis, man. You just kind of show up and be like, what do you want to do? Okay, I'm going to stand over here and you do it and not get in your way. It's a long story. Sit down. No, sit down. The only way that I possibly could have gotten away with directing Bruce Willis was shortly before I did, there was a huge life change that I made. At age 38, I became a stoner. A lot of people are just like, what do you mean? What do you mean? You weren't stoning before and shit like that? And I hadn't been. I wrote all those movies and shit like that. I had smoked weed from time to time and shit, but a rank fucking amateur and shit. And I was always one of those guys like, I don't get high. I don't feel the effects of it and shit like that. So that all changed. When I became 38, I became a hardcore stoner slowly over the course of like many hours. It took, because what happened was it was the 4th of July right before Zach and Miri Make a Porno opened up. I was done cutting the movie. We kind of put it to bed and shit like that. We were just waiting for it to come out, do maybe a little final touch-up mix. And earlier, a few months earlier, when we made Zach and Miri, Malcolm was there, as always, and he was telling me, he came up to me one day on set, and he goes, Rogan wants to get high with you. And I was like, right on, I don't do that. And he's going, I know you don't normally do that, but this is Rogan. It's like he invented weed, you know? He's the god of pot smokers. And I was like, yeah, but I can't fucking smoke pot and fucking, I never smoke pot anyway. You think I'm gonna do it while I'm making a movie? I can't do that sort of thing, man. Just tell him like maybe when the movie's over. But even then, Malcolm, you know me, I'm not a smoker. He's like, I know. So show went on and stuff, had a great time while we were doing it and whatnot. And we got toward the end of it, and it was like the last day, and Banks finished before Seth finished. And Seth and I were on set doing some last minute stuff for very few things he had to do before we were gonna let him go forever. And so we're standing there waiting for a setup and shit, and I rolled up on him and I was just like, what are you gonna do after we wrap tonight? And he was like, oh, I'll probably just pack and whatnot, I'm off in the morning. And I was like, well, I was thinking maybe we can go to the editing room and smoke a joint. And he goes, finally! I was beginning to think you weren't Kevin Smith. I was like, why? He's like, because of those movies and all the weed and stuff. And I was like, I just write stuff and make it up. You? He's like, all true. So we hung out after the shoot. We went up to the editing room and smoked a joint. I hadn't done it in a while, and he, Seth had killer fucking weed and shit. I'd probably been smoking Jersey ditch weed my whole life. And this dude was like, this just came from God's own fucking ass. Smoke it in. And I did, and like, half a joint in, and we were just like, I love you, man. You're just the funniest dude ever. And I was half a glass of water. Then I smoked the joint, and then you're really funny, man. I was a big fan, so we sat there chit-chatting, and I found that it made me like, I dropped all my kind of bullshit about how I dealt with them and not wanting to be too complimentary or something. Don't give this fucker the edge, he's younger or something. Just dropped it all, man. I was like, I think you're a genius, dude. You are really one of the few people I've ever worked with in my life that I'm just like, I bow to you. I think you're way smarter than I think you're funny. I think you're gonna go far, man. I think Zack and Miri's gonna be a huge movie in your career. He's like, you think? I was like, I made Mallrats, I know. So I had a great time. It was phenomenal and shit, but that was it. It was one night, and I wasn't one of those guys, like the next morning I wasn't like, where do we get more of that weed? I was just like, that was great and fucking good to know that I can imbibe and enjoy weed and shit like that. But I had shit to do back home, went home, edited the movie, worked on it and shit. Come to 4th of July, we're done. Nothing to do movie-wise. And I live in a house with my wife and my kid, and her parents live with us as well. Lovely setup, they're great people and shit. It's not like a sitcom where I'm like, I hate you fuckers! I just want to fuck your daughter! Great people, love them to fucking death and shit. So, but there, it's 5 people in the house. This is a big house, and so you don't run into people if you don't want, but 5 people in the house is always 5 people in the house, and the kid is always a kid, and the kid always comes first before the dad in bed. Well, I mean, follow my story. I didn't mean that. Ew. What the fuck is your head, you sick fucks? That's my daughter. So the kid usually always comes first in the house and stuff like that. So when the kid goes away, it's kind of a cool thing. It's vacation for me and Jen, because Jen and I didn't really get to date that much. We met, I was like, how are you? I would like to impregnate you right now, And it happened, and we were off and running and shit. We kind of skipped the dating part, and Byron and Gail are really nice in as much as they've afforded us about 10 years to kind of date each other, even though we're married. And they do that by taking the kid, go somewhere with her. They'll take her to Big Bear or something like that. They'll take her to Disney, take her to Knott's Berry Farm, and they'll go away for like a day or two and leave Jen and I alone in the house. And it's awesome, because when I'm alone in a house, it takes me right back to my teenage years when I lived with my mother and my father and shit like that. When they left the house, that's when I could try to fucking feel up girls and stuff like that. Because I couldn't bring chicks to the house and shit like that, because my parents weren't into that, and plus, no girls would fuck me. Who am I kidding? So, couldn't really bring girls back to the house and whatnot, so when they would go away, that's when I'd like pick up the phone and call people and be like, Norma, you want to come over and give me a hand job? No? Okay, good night, thanks, click. Jessica, you want to come over and give me a hand job? No? Okay, fuck you, bye, thanks. And just keep going until you found one, until suddenly you're like, oh shit, my parents are pulling up, I'll give myself a hand job, And that was that. So whenever Byron and Gail and the kid leave the house and it's just me and her, like I immediately revert to a fucking high school kind of condition where I just want to fuck her. I love my wife. I'm obviously big fan of her and shit like that, and we're partners on the road of life, and I respect her. But I love to fuck my wife. That is like that's it on a stick. That's why I married her and shit. She's like, did you marry me for love? I was like, yes, and sex. So once we hear that they're going to be out of the house, I immediately dial into just like, I just want to do something wrong and nasty. Because that's what happened. My parents would leave, So like Byron and Gail took Harley on 4th of July up to Big Bear and shit. And once they left, I turned to her and I was like, the baby's gone. Let's do something dirty. And she's like, what do you mean? I was like, I don't know, man. Let's like fuck on the kid's bed or something. Just something wrong, bring Satan into our sex, kill a small bird or something like that while we both come. And she's just like, she's like, you want to do something transgressive? I said, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Let's be bad together and shit. And she's like, well, we have that weed in the safe. And I was like, oh my God, the weed. Her friend Trish, years ago, about 5 years prior, had given us a little wooden box that had weed in it for a Christmas present. Her and Jen and I aren't big smokers. But so we were like, thanks, what do we do with it? They're like, just keep it around, man. Like, you never know and shit like that. And I enjoyed having it in the house, and it was in a safe in the house because I felt really grown up and shit like that. And I couldn't wait for somebody to be like, "Ugh, do you have any weed?" And I could be like, "I do. Hold on a second." So it had been in there for a while, and she's like, "Look, nobody's here and shit. Let's smoke it. Like maybe we smoke weed together, like we tried once before." And I was like, "Ooh, yeah." And we had tried to smoke weed once before, and we succeeded very well. But it was a bizarre set of circumstances. It wasn't as clear cut and shit, and it didn't warrant doing it again. Like we had been living over it in Ledge, in Beverly Hills and shit, because the house we live in Hollywood is on a hill in a desert, and it flooded. We had to move out. Long story, I'm not going to tell it. We moved to this house in Beverly Hills, this rental house on Sierra. Thank you, Sierra. On Sierra in Beverly Hills and whatnot. And while we were living in the house and whatnot, we had another one of those occasions where Trish was like, "You guys ever smoke together?" And we're like, "Yeah, cigarettes, like motherfuckers, because we're hard ass. Cigarettes make you look cool and grown up." And she was like, "No, I meant weed." And I was like, "No, we don't really do that." And she's like, "I'm gonna give you guys 2 joints to take home tonight. You guys should smoke up. It'd be fun and whatnot." She gave us 2 joints. We took them home. Again, nobody was in the house that night, so I was like, "Let's smoke this demon weed and see what happens and shit." And so we smoked it, and we smoked 1 joint together and kind of passed it back and forth and whatnot. And we're both pretty heavy smokers at that point, so we were both smoking it like a cigarette, just like deep draws and shit. Just giving it to her, trying to have a conversation and whatnot. And where's the filter on this thing, and passing it back. We smoked it all the way down to the end, didn't really feel anything. And I was like, "I'm not stoned. Are you stoned?" She's like, "Not really." I was like, "I don't get stoned. Let's smoke the other joint and see what happens." So we started smoking the other joint and shit, and she was like, took 1 hit, and she was like, "Oh, I don't want to smoke anymore." I was like, "Really? Well, we lit it. We should keep smoking it, and I'm not high yet." And it was about halfway through that joint that I realized that sometimes you smoke, it takes a little while to catch up to you. And by the time I finished that second joint, it had caught up and hit me like a fucking freight train. And I had become like green, man. Like, that's what she said. I was just like, she's looking at me, and she's like, and I said, "What's the matter?" She goes, "Kevin, you're green." And I was like, "Yeah, bitch, I'm high, And she's like, "No, you're green. Your pallor is green." I looked in the mirror, and my complexion had turned kind of greenish looking. And I didn't know shit about weed. So I'm sitting there going, "I've overdosed on marijuana." Like, I don't know what to do, man. Like, we should call the cops or something like that. Apparently, if you smoke too much, it just affects, and I can't have this forever. Like, maybe if we stop it now, we call the cops. She's like, "You don't want to call the cops right now. You're really stoned." I was like, "I know, you told me I'm green." I was like, "I need food, right?" She's like, "Yeah, we should get you food." I was like, "Yeah, food. They say to eat when you're high, Maybe that's what we need to do, get some food." And so we went downstairs to the kitchen. There was no fucking food to be had. I was like, "Oh my God, man, I'm fucking overdosing on weed and I can't eat. This is hell on earth." And she's like, "Well, let's order from yummy.com. Yummy.com is this, I don't know how else to describe it. It's a delivery service for a convenience store. It's a convenience store that essentially delivers groceries to you. So essentially, you call them up, and you'll be like, "Hey, man, I want a big packet of diapers, a bottle of vodka, and some rub-off lottery tickets." And they'll be like, "We'll bring that right to you." And they hang up. In 20 minutes, they come to your door, hand you a bag, you give them some cash or your credit card. Off they go. A convenience store that delivers stoner's best friend, Because you're never without. And they've got a wide selection and shit. And it was one of the reasons, technically, honestly, that I actually made the move to Los Angeles. Because I was like, they have convenience stores that deliver food? I could get fatter out there? Let's do it, So I went out and shit, and we love this service, Pink Dot, which still exists in Los Angeles. I've seen it every time I visited, and I was really caught up in the lure of the convenience store that would actually deliver and shit. But Pink Dot wouldn't serve to us because we bought Ben Affleck's old house. And when Ben Affleck was living in the house, he would go off and shoot movies and shit. His friends never had less than 7, 8 people living in that house with him at the time. They would stay behind. They didn't have the Ben Affleck fucking money, but they liked living in Los Angeles. They liked ordering shit from this place called Pink Dot that delivers. And what they would do is they'd order a big bunch of food and shit. Pink Dot would show up. They'd open the door, put like 8 bags in. They'd be like, "Thanks, motherfucker," slam, And all of a sudden that dude was like, hey, I hate Ben Affleck, you know. Off he would go and shit. And I guess they did that more than once because I guess Ben and the house itself had a reputation because we moved into the house, me and Jen, January of 2002. No furniture, just one TV, and we were like, let's order a pizza. And I was like, no, we're in Los Angeles now. Let's order from Pink Dot. Let's order from a convenience store that will bring us diapers and liquor and rub-offs. And she was just like, okay, because she knew I was really into it and shit. So we called up Pink Dot and shit, and I said, I'd like to place the following order, and we basically look on everything on the computer screen and shit. Tons, big fucking order and shit. It was the first time. We were watching the Golden Globes, so we wanted a lot of food to watch and shit. So I was all finished, and they're like, great, what's your address? And I gave them my home address, and they go, oh, fuck you, Affleck, and they hung up. So basically, we had to start ordering from Yummy.com, which is cool. It was in our neighborhood, and they were much friendlier, and they'd always deliver to us. And even though we were displaced from our home and living over at Sierra, we called them up and started ordering shit. I was like, can you guys deliver here? I need emergency food. And they were just like, okay, we're on our way. Where are you? And I gave them the address. And they're like, okay, what do you want? Listed everything. Start going through, like, let's do this and shit. But do shit like 3 Ben and Jerry. And she's like, what kind? I'm like, you pick. So we sat there ordering, and Jen would be like, get some of this. I'd be like, yeah, let's do that and whatnot. And we were all done, and the lady was just like, okay, is that going to finally complete your order? And I was like, yeah. And she told me the amount. It sounded high and shit, but I was like, right on. She's like, that'll be there in about half hour. I said, okay, and I hung up and shit. I was like, we're going to chow down. And Jennifer's like laughing hysterically. And I was like, what are you laughing at? She's like, look at the phone. And I look at the phone, a little window that tells you how long you've been on the phone. 28 minutes. "28 fucking minutes of just ordering food and shit, you know, and just, we might have gone through the whole menu and whatnot, I'm not quite sure. So I was like, wow, that food's on its way. I think it's time for me to take a shit, you know, and she was just like, I think on weed, you tend to say things out loud that you wouldn't otherwise. I said, good point. And I went to the bathroom and shit, looked in the mirror, I was still kind of green, and I was just kind of hoping I could shit it out of me and whatnot. Because I'm stoned, I don't know, I'm not educated and shit, so I'm like, maybe I have to piss and shit the chlorophyll out of my body before I become a man thing, you know? So I sit down and whatnot to take a shit, and I've never taken a shit while stoned before. It's a completely new fucking experience for me. And I'm not prepared for it. I'm used to shitting, I'm a career shitter, you know what I'm saying? But like this, I was ill prepared for it. I'm sitting down, and all of a sudden it just feels like my ass is like, it feels like it's a slow opening fucking, it felt like the beginning of 2001. It was just like, bah, bah, bah. And I'm just like, open the fucking pod bay doors, Hal. But it took a long fucking time, man. And it was just like, suddenly I felt like, okay, the head's out, the turtle head has popped out, and I can't see. That's the thing. Like, even if I could see, if I was thin, I still don't know if I'd be able to see. I don't know how it works for thin people and shit, but when I sit on a toilet, I've got a lot of leg chub. I have childbearing hips and thighs. So when I sit on a toilet, what happens is the flab rolls over the side and creates a kind of hermetic seal around the bowl. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know what's going on beneath me. So I always have to picture it with the mind's eye. You know, I always have to imagine what's going on. That's good because I work in the entertainment business, so I can imagine shit. And I'm sitting there fucking shitting, and all I can see is this shit kind of coming out of me slowly, like almost like fucking like Tom Carvel style. Like soft serve. But not fast, really slow. And it was fucking thick. Like it felt like I was sitting there and like I'm running commentary as I'm sitting on the toilet because I'd never felt anything like it. And when you're high, you're into the texture of things. You know, you're very touchy. Thankfully, I didn't touch, but my sphincter was communicating all sorts of interesting things to me. So I'm trying to build it, a picture in my mind's eye, and I keep going, it's ropey. Like I don't know how else to describe it, but it's ropey. I think my poop is ropey. And I felt that because it would not break. Like normally I get in and it's like 3 pieces in varying length and pinch, 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 wiping out, you know? This would not break. It just kept fucking going and going. And it was like Avatar. It wouldn't end. It just fucking... And I could just see it in my head. It wasn't ropey like a rope, like a rope, like a clothesline that you hang clothes on or something. It wasn't that thin rope. It was like the rope you tie up the Love Boat with. Like yacht mooring ropes, real fucking cable thick like this, you know, like cock thick or something like that. And in my head, all I can see is this rope pouring out of my ass like some sort of Arabic magic trick or something like that. And then finally, I feels like it's done and whatnot, and I'm like, oh my God. And I'm a total fucking looker, you know what I'm saying? Like, I like to look in the ball. I'm not one of those dudes that's just like, flush and ignore it. Like, that's the closest to childbirth I'll ever get. So I want to see the results. Like, I worked on that for 9 hours. Let me see, you know. So I always get up and look, and I'm expecting to see a fucking bowl full of shit, man. Because I've been sitting there for a long, long fucking time and just fucking pouring out of me. And I thought, like, while I was sitting there, I was like, there's going to be so much shit, it's going to push you off the toilet. Like, I saw myself as a cartoon character who's just, like, pooping, like, at the top of a tower and shit like that. So I'm ready to look into the bowl, and I'm thinking I'm going to flush before I wipe because, god damn it, there's, like, mountains of fucking crap in there. And I look in, little rabbit pellet, that big. Just a tiny ass fucking nugget. And I'm like, where did it all go? But weed slows down time, you know, and that's what it did. All that shit was that tiny little fucking nugget. And then I was just like, god damn, there must not be a lot to wipe. And I wrap my hand up with toilet paper and shit and give it one long fucking wipe. And I look, I'm like, that's fine, you know, and fucking put it in, flush the toilet and shit, wash, try to compose myself, climb out of the fucking bathroom again. I'm just chuckling and shit because of the tiny piece, and I can't wait to tell Jen about my poop. I'm like an infant. And so I get out there, and I go to tell her, but she's looking at me with this fucking scared expression on her face. She's kind of white and pale, and she's surrounded by 30 bags of groceries. All fucking full, and I was just like, what's this? And she goes, that's the food you ordered. And I was like, when did this come? And she goes, 45 minutes ago. I said, 45 minutes ago? How long have I been in the bathroom? 2 hours, Kevin. I say, get the fuck out of her. She goes, no, you've been in there for 2 hours. And I was so fucking worried or something. And I was like, if you're so worried, why didn't you bang on the door? She's like, I did bang on the door. I was like, I didn't hear you. She's like, I thought you did because you were talking to me. And I was like, what? She said, yeah, I kept banging on the door going, oh, you all right? And you kept saying, it's ropey, it's ropey. So, that was the first time we'd ever gotten stoned together. Cut back to the present in my story, July 4th, right before Zack and Miri comes out. Her and I are sitting there deciding whether or not we want to smoke again. And I said, let's do it. And she said, can you roll a joint? Because I can. I was like, oh yeah, I made fucking clerks, bitch. I can roll a joint. I rolled the fattest, lumpiest, fucking terrible looking non-joint you've ever seen. It looked more like a fucking devil dog than a joint and shit. And we smoked it up, and this time it was just way different. You know, I'd had the kind of experience with Seth. Maybe it was because the weed was all old, because it practically crumpled in my hands and shit. I was like, how do we grind this? And it literally atomized in my hands, and I was like, we're good to go. Lit it, smoked it, had such an amazing time. Like, we were just sitting there chit-chatting. We started looking at the dog differently. Like, we just got daffy in the way that you get daffy, but not in the way that, like, movies always show it. Like, it was this different kind of mind and body, soul fucking transference experience where we just laughed at the dog for an hour, you know? Picked up Shecky, a little wiener dog. We were like, and the dog was just hanging there, you know, because we're picking up by the top and the whole lower half of the body is hanging like a fucking grandfather clock pendulum. And her face is just like, why? Like, you're a weird size. I don't laugh at you. Oh, but we had such a blast and shit. And then I was like, let's fuck. And she was like, I'm way ahead of you. And we started fucking, and it was astounding. It was amazing. Like, I love sex. Coming is my currency. I love to fucking shit. I never knew it could be that fucking cool. It was like taking fucking peanut butter and somehow making it better. You know what I'm saying? Like, if peanut butter is the best food stuff on the planet, could do anything, finding a way to improve it. It was like taking peanut butter and putting pussy all in it and shit. And suddenly I was like, oh my God, this is the best. Why didn't anybody do it before? It was amazing. We had such a good fucking time. And when you come, forget it. Like, it's fucking, it's nuts. Like, I thought I knew how to orgasm and shit. I've been training for years and whatnot. By myself and with a few others. But this time, man, I was fucking, we were doing it, and when I came, it was like, it's ropey, you know? And I loved it and shit, and then afterwards, we were just sitting there talking with each other. There was no fucking, like, inhibition. I was suddenly like Malcolm. I was ready to take my shirt off and shit, but I wasn't that stoned. I kept it on. So I was just like, hey, man, let's go out and eat. And she's like, yeah? But we can't drive. I was like, fuck it, let's take cabs. Don't people take cabs? I see them do it in Sex and the City all the time. And she's like, yeah, we can take a cab. And we took a cab to this restaurant, Simon, L.A. And they got this platter there that I like. It's a dessert platter. I think it's called Circus or some such shit. Basically, it starts with like 2 bowls of cotton candy. It's got homemade fucking Hostess-looking cupcakes with a design on the top. You wash it down with a very thick chocolate milkshake. Comes with fucking cookies, gingerbread men, fucking Rice Krispie treats dipped in chocolate and shit like that. So we hit the restaurant and I was like, we want 2 circuses right now. And instead of sitting inside, normally we go sit inside and I'll look for a corner and put my back against it and shit, because I always want to see who's coming in the room, like I'm Doc Holliday or some such shit. And this time I didn't care. I was like, she was like, well, it would be nice to sit outside. I was like, let's sit outside tonight. And she was like, you must be high. I was like, I am. And we went outside and there was gorgeous, fat, plush couches with big pillows on them and shit. And I've been to that restaurant a lot, and I saw younger, thinner people on them in love, hanging on each other, being gross in public. And I was like, that's me tonight. And I threw her down and we started making out on the fucking couch. And people in the restaurant are like, ew. But I didn't give a shit because we were real high. We were eating our dessert and feeding each other shit and whatnot. Had such a blast. Took the cab back home, have some of the best conversations we ever had. Like, don't you like shit? I'm like, yeah, I like shit. Don't you like shit? She's like, we're an amazing couple. We get out of the fucking cab in front of our house, and I see a neighbor, dude who lives across the street from us, down the way a little bit, pulling his garbage to the curb and shit. And right next to the garbage, he has a porta potty because they're doing some work, I guess, in his house. And I've never talked to these people, but I'm stoned, so I'm like, let's talk to the neighbors, man. Like, don't you want to meet the neighbors? She's like, you sure you want to meet them now? I was like, fuck, yes, let's go meet the neighbors. So I'm like, hey, man. And the guy's like, Jesus Christ. He's like, hey. And I was like, hey, man, how are you? I'm Kevin Smith. This is Jennifer. We live across the street. He's like, I know. I haven't seen you before. I was like, this is great. When did you guys move in? He's like, 4 years ago. And I was like, right on. I've never really seen you guys before, man. And till now, another dude was coming out and shit. I thought it was his boyfriend. We live in a pretty big neighborhood, so there are lots of same-sex couples around us and shit. So when I saw the dude, I was like, it's another dude. Dude's living together and shit. He came out. He's like, hi. And I was like, hey, man, I'm Kevin. This is my wife, Jennifer. We were just talking to your guy here. We never didn't know you guys were living here for 4 years. He's like, yeah, 4 years. I was like, you guys dating? They're like, kinda. And I was like, yeah, that's awesome, man. We're dating, kinda. We're married, but whatever. I was like, you got a porta potty here. They're like, yeah, we're really sorry about that. We've been doing some work. I said, oh, don't fucking say it to me, dude. There's one time, I guess, before you guys lived here, we had some shit, a flood in our house. So we had a porta potty right in front of the fucking garage. So you and me, we're kind of like in the porta potty club, right? Dude's looking at his boyfriend like, this guy's stoned. And he's like, yeah, we just have it because we're doing some work in the kitchen. And I was like, get out of here, in the kitchen? He's like, yeah. I was like, can I see it? And Jennifer looks at me like, oh my God, what's happened? Because I would never ask that question and shit. And he's like, I guess, if you guys want to come in. I was like, fucking take us in. Let's see the kitchen, man. It's going to be awesome. Come on, Jen. We go into the house and shit. Bring us through the front door. And I'm touching everything because I'm way tactile at this point. I'm like, ooh, the paint feels nice. He brings us into the kitchen and shit, and he's just like, this is pretty much what we're doing, working on a counter for the middle of it and shit. And Jennifer's rubbing the counter and having her hands all over it and shit. She goes, oh, this is nice. What is this? And the guy goes, well, it's cherry wood. And she goes, ooh, cherry wood. And that's when I snapped out of my stone. Like, she harshed my buzz, because I'm like, this bitch doesn't care about cherry wood. Why is she saying that? And what are we doing here? What is this? So he's like, thank you and good night, and we left, So I'd kind of gotten into it, and I was like, I like this. I like who I am when I'm on weed and shit. And I said, I'm 38, I'm an adult, I can make this choice. I've built a fucking empire, now I just want to smoke it away, Like, I think that would sound fun, and I've never been a drinker or anything like that, so suddenly I had myself a little vice, and one that made me feel good, and it made me toss away my cigarettes, too, because I started smoking so much weed, I just quit the regular cigarettes. Yeah. That's how you do it. Kids, that's how you get off cigarettes. Smoke weed. I don't recommend it for kids. I tell my kid, too, when I finally told her about weed, I said, look, you're allowed to start smoking at age 38. And when you do, it's going to be amazing. But until then, be a good girl. Now, hand daddy is bomb, So I just kind of got into it, and I liked it, and I started saying, like, you know what, man, I'm going to smoke like 6 o'clock every day. That's going to be the fucking reward that I give to myself. Like, I'll work all day long, and then at 6, like, I'll kind of kick back and start smoking and whatnot. And then, after about like a week of that, I was like, why am I waiting until 6 o'clock? Like, I don't really have much going on right now. Like, I can get my shit done about, I don't know, noon, and then really get a good smoke on, that'd be interesting. So I started doing that and whatnot. And right around that time, Zack and Miri opened up. Zack and Miri, we were kind of hoping was going to be the first $100 million grossing movie that we made. That's what everybody thought across the boards, Miramax, the Weinstein Company, rather. Me, Moj, Seth, everybody involved were just like, this is it. You finally cracked the code. You're going to go beyond your glass ceiling of $30 million and shit. And it was funny, and we dug it and whatnot. Couldn't wait for it to come out. Came out October 31st. Came out on Halloween, which I thought was a cool date to put a movie out, because I was just like, nobody celebrates Halloween. Only little kids do it, and little kids aren't coming to the R-rated movies, so all the adults will come to Zack and Miri Mega Porno. I failed to realize adults also enjoy Halloween and like to go out in droves and shit. So what happened was, morning, the movie opens up. We'd had this weak-ass kind of a campaign in terms of, like, there were literally stick figures on our poster for Seth and Elizabeth. It was a tough sell. The marketing was weird in as much as networks wouldn't let us use the word porno before 9 o'clock. So some ads were like Zack and Miri, and some ads were Zack and Miri Mega Porno. And I was like, I mean, I'm not saying you're going to create confusion in the marketplace, but my mom might go see a movie called Zack and Miri, but she would never go see Zack and Miri Mega Porno. Like, that's a whole different movie. And they're like, don't worry, we know what we're doing and shit. Movie opens up Saturday morning. I didn't want to know the grosses the day before. You can find them out and shit over the phone, but I didn't want to find that out at all. I just wanted to be surprised the next day and shit. Saturday morning, I get up, go to the bathroom. I come out of the bathroom and shit. Jennifer's sitting at her desk about to open her computer. She's like, did you look yet? And I was like, no, I haven't looked yet. She's like, you mind if I look? I was like, you can look. I'm going to go grab my robe. I went in the closet, grabbed my robe, come out. Bad, pale, white expression on her face. And I was just like, not good. She goes, do you want to know? And I was like, yeah, now, kind of, I guess. And so this is where time kind of slows down and shit. Moments like this in your life, everything kind of slows down. You remember it perfectly. Everything was going on, the dust in the air, blah, blah, blah. I'm focused on my wife's mouth as she's about to deliver the information that I've been waiting a year to hear. And she goes, 2. And I'm looking at her going, 2. What number begins with 2? 20 million? Like, did we open at 20 million bucks? Holy shit, man, I'm moving out of this fucking house today. Like, this is amazing and shit. But I was like, no, she never says 20. I've heard her say 20 plenty. So maybe it's 212. Yeah, that's what she meant. It's 212 and shit. And then I watch her mouth again and she goes, ooh, point. And then I was like, point? 2 points? So it's not 22 or 12. It's literally $2 million. $2 million, do the quick extrapolation in your math. If it was 2, 2, and 2 for Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, it was going to be $6 million. That would be a horrible opening for a movie that, you know, had Seth Rogen in it, the guy from fucking Knocked Up and shit like that. To put it in context, Clerks 2 opened at 10 million bucks, and it didn't have the guy from fucking Knocked Up in it. So we were just like, I'm sitting there looking at that face and lips and hearing the 2 point, and I'm like, oh my God, man. Well, cognitively reframe immediately, you know, save the village before it burns down. The next number has to be a 9. You know, if it's a 9, then we're gonna get close to 10 million maybe, and there's less fucking shame in that. So I'm looking for a 9. Is it higher than? I'm playing card sharks at this point. Is it higher than a 9? And I'm watching her face, and she goes 2, and then she says 2 again, and I'm like, don't say 2, say 9. And she couldn't do it. It was 2.2 million on a Friday. That meant if you extrapolate it from that point, if it stayed the exact same, we would have made 6 to 7 for the weekend. That not good. So right then and there, I said, dear, I'm going to my office to become a wake and baker. And from that moment forward, I didn't wait till noon and shit. I would just wake up and be like, oh, that's better, you know. And in waking baking, one of the other things I did was lick my wounds. The Zack and Miri thing hurt me so fucking deeply. I wanted Zack and Miri to make 100 million like you fucking read about, and it wasn't gonna do it. It ultimately wound up doing Kevin Smith business, which was like about 30, a little over 30. It was the highest grossing Kevin Smith movie at the time, but it didn't quite do it. And it took me a long time to figure out what it was that crushed me about it, why it bugged me and shit. And that's what I did. I spent all my time in my library, in my house, which used to be like the workout room, but we gave that up years ago. And then we put DVDs in there and shit. Nobody ever went in there. And then I think it was on Zack and Miri in post where I was like, I'm gonna put the editing room in there. Does anybody care? And she was like, no, it'll keep you in the house and shit. So then I kind of left my editing gear in there, and then I started spending more time, and then the library became my office. And how it's set up is we're on the second floor of my house, like over here. This would be like my bedroom. There's 2 rooms on that whole floor. There's the master bedroom suite. You go in the master bedroom suite, see a couch, windows. Jen's usually on the couch. That's her spot. I'm usually laying belly down on the bed, which is to her right, up 3 steps. So that's our bedroom. You go out our bedroom door down here, down the hallway. It's a big picture of Mickey Mouse. And then here, 2 doors that bring you into the fucking library. And I would go into the library, just close the doors, and just start smoking and searching for what the fuck it was that was making me so distressed and whatnot. And while I was doing that, I was finally locked away in a room full of movies, 80% of which I probably haven't opened yet. And I've been collecting these movies for fucking years and shit. Like, you know, I buy stacks of movies every week, and people are always like, dude, seriously, Joanna Man? And I'm like, you never know, dude. One day I might get hit by a car, I'm gonna be stuck in a wheelchair like Stephen Hawking's, and I'm gonna be able to watch any movie I want, and if I wanna watch Joanna Man, I want it to be right there. And shit like that. So this was one of those times. I hadn't got hit by a car physically, but spiritually speaking, emotionally speaking, I got hit by a big fucking car, I felt like. So I was like, it's time to kick back and start watching some fucking stuff that I've been storing up for years and whatnot. And one of the things I'd stored up that I'd always wanted to watch was a miniseries that the CBC did years ago, and it was called Hockey, A People's History. And it was basically about how Canada and hockey are so intertwined. It was kind of like Ken Burns baseball, but interesting. If you like hockey, you know what I'm saying? So I popped it in, and I was watching it and shit, and kind of getting into it bit by bit. And suddenly I was getting back in touch with a version of me that I hadn't seen in a while. The guy that really liked comics and had time for comics and had time for hockey and shit. And it was almost like I'd put it down 15 years ago and suddenly picked it back up with this DVD. And suddenly I was kind of bitten by not just the hockey bug in general, but like this world that was not my world. I just didn't want to talk about entertainment, deal with entertainment, and suddenly the hockey world was a great place for me to go. And during this mini-series, like they introduced Wayne Gretzky at a certain point. Wayne Gretzky is the greatest hockey player that ever lived, considered by most, roundly. Or at least the top fucking 3. So I thought I knew a thing or two about Gretzky because, you know, I'd fucking seen some news reports and shit like that. And being from Jersey, what you know about Gretzky is like he called us a Mickey Mouse organization, the New Jersey Devils, back in like '82. As you can tell, they're still fucking pissed about it. So anyway, I didn't know much about him and shit, but I'm fucking stoned watching hockey DVDs and shit, and I'm watching hockey people's history, and I'm just kind of, you know, sinking into it and whatnot. And they introduced not just Wayne, but they introduced his father, Walter Gretzky. And Walter Gretzky just comes across as like the sweetest, nicest old man you'll ever meet and shit, and he's full of homespun fucking wisdom and whatnot. So, I don't know, for some reason I really gravitated toward it, and dudes started talking about his kid. Like, and in one of the things he's going, you know, when Wayne was a little boy, he would come and set his hockey equipment out on the floor, you know, in the kitchen before we'd go play games. I'd take him over to the game. And one day I remember he was doing that, and this is in one of his last seasons with the Nadrowski Steelers, and he goes, Dad, there's a little boy on my team who hasn't had a goal all year long, so tonight I'm going to try to help him score a goal. And that boy scored 2 goals that night. And I was watching that going, get the fuck out of here, man. Like, really? And I rewound the story because I couldn't fucking believe it. And that boy scored 2 goals that night. And I was like, wow, it just fucking blew my mind because, like, it's not American. You know what I'm saying? It's just not an American sentiment. Like, the American version of that story would be like, Dad, there's a little boy who hasn't scored any goals all year for our team. So tonight, me and the boys are going to beat him with bricks. Just put a bunch of bars of soap in a sock so it doesn't leave a bruise, Dad, and hit him really fucking hard, and that'll teach him to fucking play. You just didn't hear that. Like, all of a sudden, there was a story of this little fucking kid, man, who was, like, so good at something, he was still thinking about other people and shit. He was so touched and whatnot. He was like, I'm gonna help this kid. And I was fucking blown away by that, man. I'm sitting in my library fucking watching the fucking thing, and I was just like, oh my God, man, that really happened? I gotta tell Jen. So I get up, and I fucking leave my office, and I go down the hallway, past the Mickey Mouse picture, to the door, open the door, and I jump into the room, and I was like, hey. And she's on the couch on her computer. She's like, hey. She looks back down. I was like, did you know that when he was a little boy, Wayne Gretzky said that he was going to help this teammate of his score a goal, hadn't scored all year, and he helped him fucking score 2 that night. And she goes, who the fuck is Wayne Gretzky? And I go, what are you talking about? Wayne Gretzky's the greatest hockey player that ever lived. She's like, so? And I was like, well, when he was a kid, he helped this guy score goals. She's like, and what does this have to do with us? And I said, I'm not going to sit here and listen to you run down Gretzky. And I slammed the door. Fucking went back to my office and shit. I'm like, she doesn't fucking understand a goddamn thing, you know. Smoke another joint. Watch the fucking video and shit. And Walter Gretzky keeps telling you shit about his son. Like, you know, there's a point, Wayne Gretzky, in case you don't know, the most goals ever fucking scored in the history of hockey belong to Wayne Gretzky. But to put it in layman's terms, if you look at another record, it's far more impressive. Scoring goals for a scoring genius is pretty typical and pretty easy, particularly if you're a scoring genius like Wayne Gretzky. What you look at is the other side of his record, the assists. Now, an assist is when, like, I pass you the puck, you put the puck in the net, for those of you who don't follow. Wayne Gretzky, who is the greatest hockey player in the world, has an obscene amount of, who's got the exact number? A lot. Thank you, a lot. I want to say it's 1803, I could be wrong. Huge fucking number of goals, but when you look at his assist record, it's almost, in fact, I think it's a little more than double of his goal records. And what that speaks to is the greatest scoring genius in the world, who could pretty much like walk up to a net and just sneeze the puck into it, would basically get right up to the fucking line and shit, and then just pass it over to somebody else and be like, go, do it. And they did it. And I was so fucking blown away by that. I was like, oh my God, could you imagine being so fucking good at something But letting somebody else is so fucking generous of spirit. And I was like, I gotta go tell Jen. And I went down the hallway, past the Mickey Mouse, and I opened up the door, and I was just like, do you know Gretzky's fucking assist record is more than double of his fucking score record? And she was like, that's nice, Kevin. What's an assist? And I was like, an assist is when somebody passes the goal to somebody else to put in the net. And she was just like, you're very interested in this young hockey player. And I was like, I don't think he's young. This shit happened 20 years ago. And she's like, I'm glad to see that you're into something and whatnot, you know, but don't forget that we've got some dinner tonight to go out to with Harley. And I was like, we're going out to dinner. I'm watching this DVD. And she's like, well, you can press pause. And I was like, you're trying to take me away from Gretzky, and it's not going to happen. Slam, you know. Back down to my office, man, smoke another joint, get deeper into the story of the Gretzkys and whatnot. Walter Gretzky is Wayne Gretzky's, almost his best friend, biographer, beyond just father. From a young age, we have footage of Wayne Gretzky skating, like almost his first skate. We have footage of his first goal as he puts the puck between his grandmother's legs as she sits on a Barca-lounger and shit like that. Walter Gretzky was always around, handy with a camera or a Super 8, and capturing footage of his son all the time, so that now you can go back and look at it. It's crazy. You can watch Wayne Gretzky's development through his youth. It was his father was his chronicler. His biggest fan was the guy who was always there taping him from the time he was a little sprout all the way up to when he was playing in the NHL. So I'm watching this thing. I'm like, I love this, man. This kind of shit amazes me. This is great. Then everything gets somber because they start talking about Walter Gretzky had an aneurysm. And I was like, no, not Walter Gretzky, but where's that other joint? You know, I have to get really fucking centered for this. And they start talking about Walter had a massive aneurysm at one point, kind of fell down at his mother's farm and whatnot, which he was taking care of. She was long past. They got to him enough time, brought him to the hospital, and were able to save his life for the moment. But at the same time, they didn't know how long they were going to be able to save him, so they reached out to all the children and whatnot, and they were like, you got it, called Wayne Gretzky as well as his brothers and sisters, so you have to get back to Brantford now. Everybody, the whole Gretzky family comes back to Brantford and whatnot. Walter is hanging him by a fucking thread, and there's one guy on the whole planet who could probably save him, and he's a doctor whose daughter had been murdered, so he gave up the practice, but they reached out to him, and he was like, for Canada's dad, I'll come back. Comes back, saves Walter Gretzky's life. And I'm just on the fucking edge of my seat, man. I'm like, oh, thank God it all works out for the Gretzkys. Then the fucking information hits, which blows my fucking mind. So he had the aneurysm, and they saved his life. But when he came to, they started talking to Walter, and Walter started speaking in a language nobody really recognized. And so they brought his brother in, and his brother listened to him, and he's like, he's talking about feeding the chickens. He's speaking Belarus. He's speaking like the language of our forefathers, of our grandparents when they came over. And he spoke a little when we were kids, but apparently he kind of reverted back in his head. And they're like, wow, that's interesting. We'll watch him closer. It was a long period of development to get him back into kind of fighting shape and whatnot. Brain is nothing that you want to treat very gently. But what had happened was the aneurysm wiped out about 20 years of Walter Gretzky's memories, including and especially every amazing achievement that his son had ever made. So the man who was the greatest chronicler and greatest fan of the greatest hockey player in the world, the one guy who gave a shit the most, can't remember a fucking thing. And I'm watching this, and I'm about to cry. And I go, I gotta tell Jen, and I fucking open the thing, past the Mickey Mouse, and I open up the door. I'm like, oh God, he doesn't fucking remember. And she's like, who is the dog dead? And I was like, no, Walter Gretzky doesn't fucking remember anything about it. What his son did. He had an aneurysm and he lost it all. She goes, Kevin, you are taking this family way too seriously. She's going, I think one of two things has to happen. You have to shut the DVD player off, or when you're going to watch the Gretzky stories, don't smoke weed. And I was like, you just hate Gretzky. And I slammed the door and fucking walked back. But what I was doing in that room was trying to figure out what had happened to me. And for some reason, Wayne Gretzky made it kind of clear. I don't know what it was. It wasn't so much Wayne himself. It wasn't so much, I guess maybe his accomplishments, maybe because it had nothing to do with what I do and shit. But for some reason, there was something about that man that fucking spoke to me. And it was probably this piece of advice that his father gave to him that fucking struck me like a freight train. When his father was training Wayne, because his father was Wayne's first coach as well, his father would take him out into a backyard ice rink that he built himself right behind their house for his son to sit there and play hockey on and shit. And he would say to his son, Wayne, when you're playing, don't go where the puck is. You want to go where the puck's gonna be. And that was the one piece of advice that put the greatest scoring genius the game has ever known on the path to become a legend. And I was like, that applies everywhere, man. That ain't just a fucking hockey term from some Canadian old man. That can fucking apply to my life, man. Like, don't be where the puck is, be where the puck's gonna be. And I had been that guy for a long time when I was younger. I would go where the puck was gonna be. Clerks is where the puck was gonna be, so much so that I remember Owen Gleiberman, the Entertainment Weekly, goes, don't worry, in 10 years, this is what a sitcom's gonna look like. And he was right. Like, now sitcoms are about as loose as fucking Clerks and shit. So I don't know, we were kind of used to, I was used to kind of being up here. And then over time, things changed, you know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, I sat there and made those movies while I was most creatively fallow. I was in my parents' house and shit. And it's not like I wanted out, but I was just like, I want to tell stories, man. I didn't mind living in Highlands. I liked it. I loved living in my parents. They paid the bills. So I would just sit there and think about shit to write. And that's where fucking Clerks came from, fucking Mallrats, Chasing Amy, Dogma, all conceived in that womb on 21 Jackson Street. But the problem is, thank you. The problem is all that stuff, that's here. That's here circa, say, 88 to 95, 96. But I'm all the way now over here. I mean, this is 40. 40 is much closer to the fucking crane than over there. I'm so disconnected from the source, I couldn't write those movies again if you asked me to, because I'm 40 years old, and I may not change inside and always be the same fucking person, but that shit goes away because I don't live my life like that anymore. And I realized that's what the problem was for me with Zack and Miri. I love Zack and Miri, but Zack and Miri is trying too hard to be a Judd Apatow movie. And that was me going where the puck was. And I don't do that. I go where the puck's gonna be and shit. And I realized, oh my God, I gave up my game. I slowed my game down because I wanted the praise that Judd got, because Judd got praise for doing the kind of movies I did. And I was like, right on, man. Judd has made the movies we do commercial. You can make money off this shit now and whatnot. Then we went out there and it didn't happen. I was fucking crushed, and rightfully so, because I went about the wrong way. That was me sitting in a world where I'm like, I hate every movie that's out there. Nothing speaks to me. I want to make something that I recognize myself and my friends in. You know what I'm saying? That's where it came from. It came from a pure place, for lack of a better description, and certainly not to say like whoever is pre-calculated about making movies is a demon. No, it's a business as well, so people make shit that people do want to see purposely sometimes. Some of us do it accidentally and shit. Back in the day, I didn't make films, you know what I'm saying? I still kind of don't. I'm a little bit more of a filmmaker now, but back then I was not a filmmaker. A lot of people online would tell me, you're no fucking filmmaker, and they were right. They were dicks for saying it, but they were absolutely right. I was no filmmaker. I was this different breed, man, a hybrid and shit. Film just seemed like the easiest way to have the conversation more than anything else. I wasn't like Lucas and Spielberg, like I came out of the womb with a Super 8 camera in my hand, you know? I came out of the womb with a sandwich in my hand. So for me, it takes more diligence to like kind of concentrate on being a quote unquote filmmaker. And when I do, I become self-conscious of it, and I think the strings start to show. The earlier stuff, there was no self-consciousness because like we were all so earnest and trying and shit. But I look at those movies now, they don't look like films as much as they look like, to me, like Clerks looks like a $27,000 icebreaker, you know? That's what it seems like to me. Just the kind of thing where it's like, hi, my name is Kevin Smith, and I'd like to talk to you for the next 50 years. And Clerks was the only way to get the conversation started, essentially. Once I did that, we could start talking, and we would talk through the movies, and Mallrats, or talk after the movies, or on the website and shit like that. Chasing Amy, all these movies, they weren't just films. They weren't films at all. It was me ripping open my chest, pulling fatty chunks of my heart out, slapping it between two platters, projecting that shit and being like, do you get it? And people would be like, yes. Mm-hmm. Now, the problem with that, though, is it's not really problematic. It's just like At a certain point, that's going to go away. At a certain point, damn it, you can't hold on to that forever. I can't be 20-something all my life. Some people go like, how come you won't do Chasing Amy again? Make another Chasing Amy. It's like, bitch, I can't. You're lucky you got fucking one out of me, man. But I can't make it because I'm happy now. Like, I looked at Zack and Miri and I was just like, God damn it, Zack and Miri is me pulling from my own past to tell a story because I'm so disconnected from the source at this point because I am a 40-year-old man and shit like that. Back in the day, I could write that stuff because I was that person. It just came from me. But on Zack and Miri, I had to sit down and calculate that thing. I had to sit there and go like, okay, what if I told the story of how we made Clerks, but make it a porno instead, and at the end I fuck Scott, who's a girl? That's not a pure place to make the movie from. That's not the way I went about any of the other ones and shit. And being stoned in that room in my office and listening to the Gretzky story and kind of figuring out that I had lost my way and I was nowhere near where the puck was going. I was now playing catch up to a puck. I turned off. I was like, that's it. It's time to stop and recreate and do something else and whatnot. And I knew I didn't want to write because I knew if I wrote a script right then at that point in time that I would just sit there and be like, this is a movie about a poor little fat boy whose movie didn't make as much money as he wanted. You know, just not an entertaining movie when you think about it like that. I tend to write very confessionally, pull from my life, but at that moment I realized there wasn't much of a life to pull from anymore in terms of trying to tell stories about slackers. I don't know about, like, come on, man, the reality of, like, we can't pay our bills, let's make a porno. I haven't been unable to pay my bills in, like, 20 years. I don't know anything about that kind of thing. I watch Zack and Miri, and I'm like, you fucking slackers, get a job. So for me, I was just like, I don't want to write anything. And in that moment, into that world, all of a sudden came the script for Cop Out. It was called A Couple of Dicks back then. And it was sent to me by this dude, Jeff Robinoff, who's the head of Warner Brothers. And Jeff and I hadn't been friends for a long time. We had this really disastrous meeting once at the Warner Brothers office where I went in and I was like, I hear you want to talk about comic book movies. He's like, I hear you want to talk about comic book movies. And I was like, okay. You don't want to? He's like, don't you want to? And I was like, is Ashton Kutcher involved in this meeting? It was really weird. It was an awkward meeting. I left there. I was like, I don't ever want to work at that place again. Dude made me feel weird and shit. Years later, I guess I was on stage at the Comic-Con with Zack Snyder and Apatow was up there and Frank Miller and whatnot. And I guess the Warner Brothers people, Jeff Robinoff particularly, saw me doing a Q&A and thought I was kind of funny. Called my agent. He was like, tell Kevin to come in for a meeting. And Phil was like, he ain't going in, dude. You know he don't like you and shit. He's like, tell him it'll be worth his while. Come in for this meeting. So I went in. I hadn't met with the dude in like fucking 8 years and shit like that. And I first walked in. He goes, people have been asking me all week what I'm going to do when I lose this job. I was like, are you about to? He's like, maybe, because I'm thinking of hiring you. He's like, people have been asking me what I'm going to do with this job after I'm done with this job, what am I going to do? And I tell him that I'm going to produce your talk show. And I was like, I'm not going to do the talk show. He's going, I know, that's why I say it. He's going, I think you're funny, man, and I think, your sensibility could be, you could find a home for it here at Warner Brothers. And I was like, well, you should probably see some of the shit I'm doing now. And that was Zack and Miri, and I kind of showed him Zack and Miri, and he loved it. He was just like, oh my God, you actually know what to do with a camera now. Like, you know how to film make. For years, you just kind of did those movies where people were like, I like Dick and Star Wars. He's like, but now you can actually make a fucking movie, put it all together and shit like that. So I said, yeah, it's good to know. We'll figure out, see if we could do something. I left. It was a good meeting for once and shit. And then there was a script came across my desk. It was a script for A Couple of Dicks. It was written by the Cullen brothers, Cullen. And I had worked with them on Man-Child, a pilot that we had done for Showtime years before. Totally good guys. And they were writers, comedy writers particularly, but they'd never sent me anything before, and I thought they sent it to me to like, hey man, what do you think? Is this funny or something like that? So I didn't get to it right away. I just kind of put it on a pile. And then Jeff Robinoff had kind of called me up, I guess, like 3 weeks later, and he was just like, hey man, did you ever read that script I sent you? And I was like, what script? He said, A Couple of Dicks. And I said, you sent that script? And he said, yeah. I said, why do you want me to read it? You want me to be in it? And he goes, no, I don't want you to be in it. And I was like, do you want me to rewrite it or something like that? I said, I don't really do that anymore. He goes, no, I don't want you to rewrite it. And I was like, you want me to work craft service on the movie, or is it? And he goes, I think it's really funny that fucking 3 guesses in, you still haven't guessed your own trade. And I was like, you want me to direct? He's going, we're thinking about it. We think you might be good for this. I was like, oh, dude, nobody ever asked me to direct scripts that I don't write. I mean, they used to, but I just say no and shit like that. And I could barely direct the ones I do write. Why you want to put me in charge of one that I didn't? He's going, I think it's time. I've seen Zach and Mary. I think it's ready to go. Why don't you read the script? Tell me what you think. And I read the script and it made me laugh. I thought it was really funny and shit. I read it with an eye toward directing and whatnot. I was like, wow, I could pull this off. It's pretty simple. There's like 3 tentpole moments, but other than that, it's 2 dudes talking to each other. I do that very well, you know? So I was like, that's why they like me. They want me to do the buddy cop thing, and because I can do buddy comedy and whatnot. So I called them up and I was just like, you know what, dude? I normally I say no to shit like this, but I'm tired of saying no to like cool things. I've said no to a lot of cool things that have been thrown my way over the years because I'm like, I don't do that. I just write my own shit. And I was just like, this is something that I would be into doing, man. Like the notion of like, if I had fucking like went back and told myself, like young version of myself, 16-year-old Kevin Smith, I come in a time machine, 38, 39-year-old Kevin Smith, and I'm like, hey, motherfucker, I see you're watching Moonlighting with Bruce Willis right now. One day, you're going to direct David Addison in a movie. How about that? And I think the younger version of me would be like, how the fuck did we get so fat? You got no exercise in the future? I was like, shut up, man. Don't be one of those fucking people. But it just seemed like a really kind of exciting thing. Like, I would have loved this when I was a kid. So you know what? I'm gonna think about doing it. The other thing that really struck me about it, the kind of movie my father took me to all the time. My father was huge at play in The Decision. I was like, God, he took me to see Lethal Weapon. He took me to see fucking Beverly Hills Cop. He took me to see Running Scared. He even took me to see Freebie and the Bean. Like, my father took me to see a lot of fucking buddy cop movies and shit. So I was like, you know what? He would like this. This would be a total dad movie. You know, because my dad for years would watch my stuff and not quite get it. It wasn't really geared for him. But he could see, a couple of dicks, it was called at the time, or Cop Out as it became. He could see that and be like, oh, you do make movies for a living. I just thought it was you and your friends talking about Star Wars and getting laid and shit like that. But apparently you know how to fucking, tell a story. There are guns in it, Kevin. Congratulations, So I said, right on, I'm going to be into it. And at the time that they brought me into the picture, there were 2 other guys in the lead, Marky Mark and Will Ferrell. Were supposed to play the leads. And the budget, it was a huge movie. That's true. Marky Mark, the underwear model, and Will Ferrell, Marshall Willenholly, So I was just like, right on, I could totally do that. I like Will. Will's fun to be around and shit. $75 million movie. And they were having some budget problems because I guess the boys, Will and Mark, wanted to get paid what they're worth, their salary, some shit like that, some very large salary that Warner Brothers at the time were like, look, we don't do R-rated comedy, so we don't want to spend that much money. Can you kind of take the risk with us? Because they hadn't made The Hangover yet. Hangover is the highest grossing R-rated comedy of all time, which Warner Brothers did put out, but that was about 6 months after we started making the movie. So at this time, they're a little reticent. They're like, I don't know, $75 million, man, can't you guys lower your fees? And they were like, no, and as happens with many movie deals, the 2 parties reached an impasse. Mark and Will went across the street to Sony and pitched a completely different buddy cop movie called The Other Guys. And Sony was like, okay, and it gave him $90 million to make that movie. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, I thought once those 2 dudes left, the fucking thing would just fall apart and shit like that. And Jeff Robin, I was like, you still want in? And I said, yeah, man, you still gonna make this movie? He's like, I think so. Give us a couple days. I think we got other ideas and shit, if you're still in. And I said, yeah. So then I get a call. Somebody goes, what do you think about Bruce Willis? And I dropped the mic and shit like that. I was like, Bruce Willis? I was just in fucking Live Free or Die Hard with Bruce. I love Bruce Willis. Oh my God, he's from Jersey too. Did you know that? Like, yeah, we know. They're like, we're thinking about Bruce Willis and Tracy Morgan. I was like, I've worked with that motherfucker too. Oh my God, this is a match made in heaven. I could totally do this and shit. And they're like, all right, right on. You're feeling it? I said, I'm totally feeling it. They're going to sign on? I said, yeah. They're like, we're going to lower the budget. I was like, great, because $75 million scares me. I said, look, man, give me $10. I'll pull it off. He's going, no, we're just gonna bring the budget down, do it for like 35, something like that. I was like, that's cool, dude. Believe me, the less money, the better. I said, I've read that script. It's not that complicated. We don't need that much money and shit like that. He's like, that means there's not gonna be around a lot of money for a directorial salary. And I was just like, you know what, dude, the way you're treating me and shit, like honestly, this dude, Jeff Robinov, I was at a low point and shit. He literally reached out and pulled me out of the fucking water, man. Like, and this was a dude who didn't have to, because like I went out in the press and said shit about him, called him a balding clock puncher and shit like that. I was a real prick about it. And he, you know, that dude, if I'm Jeff Robinov and I'm like, oh, Kevin Smith is hurt over Zach and Miri, good, shoot him in the ass with a poison dart. But this dude didn't. He was literally like, come on, man, come up here, man. I'm going to brush you off and shit. Real Christian thing to do and shit. I was like, are you Walter Gretzky? But he wasn't. So he was like, there's not going to be a lot of money for the salary. I said, dude, honestly, I would have done this movie fucking free for nothing. He's like, don't tell me that. And I was like, yeah, all right, well, you know, technically speaking. So basically, I was going to have to take a salary cut. It was 80% from my last movie. But again, didn't care, just wanted to do it, just wanted to make a movie with Bruce Willis. And then it became a point of pride about, like, let's keep the budget down and shit. Because I was like, I don't want to make the $75 million. I want to show to these cats that I know how to work in a studio system. I could play nice and shit. Because indie film was dying. You know what I'm saying? Indie film was like Krypton, about to explode and shit. I threw myself in a little rocket, took off to Warner Brothers. Where under Warner Brothers' Yellow Sun, I became super strong. So anyway, I was just like, I wanted to show him that I could totally, you know, like, hey man, I don't need your money, keep your fucking money, blah, 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 and shit. Took an 80% pay cut and shit, because I believed in doing the Bruce Willis movie. Wanted to in a big, bad fucking way and shit, because somewhere in the world, you know, in heaven, whatever, my father would be like, all right, right on. He's worked, you know, with fucking Bruce Willis. It's official. He's a fucking filmmaker, blah, blah, blah. So I signed on for it and whatnot and went to work. And it was a different experience in as much as I'm used to making movies a certain kind of way. You know what I'm saying? Like in my world, I'll walk onto a set and be like, Affleck, put that dick in your mouth. And Affleck is like, okay, you know. Chows down and shit like that. And doesn't really think to question it because he's just like, well, you know, Kevin's been right so many times before, except Jersey Girl. But there's a trust there because we've been together and he knows that I would never make him look like a fuck. You know, I'm going to make him look good. It behooves me to make him look good for my movie and shit. So I'm used to that kind of shorthand with people, and I walked onto the set of A Couple of Dicks to direct Bruce and Tracy for the first time, and we didn't have much rehearsal time, and I knew Bruce from working on Live Free or Die Hard. He had to approve me as the director, and he did, and I was so excited. I was like, he remembers me, you know, and shit like that. And we saw each other on a pre-shoot day. Before we did the shoot proper, we were just doing camera tests and whatnot. Him and Tracy just kind of sitting in a car. So at one point, I'm leaning against the building between shots, and he comes over, and he's like, feeling good about the movie? I was like, yeah, I am feeling good about the movie. He's like, yeah, I'm feeling good. He was like, I was just on a stage singing with the Allman Brothers the other night. I was like, get out of here, man. I don't know what that has to do with what we were talking about, but good for you, man. That's pretty fucking impressive and shit. He's like, yeah. I was like, you still like singing a lot? He's like, love it, love it. I was like, right on. I was like, you know what, man? Like in a couple weeks into the show, I'm going to be playing at Carnegie Hall, dude. So I'm doing like, I do Q&A and shit. How about like you come and play? Like I'll open for you and we'll close the show with fucking you doing like Respect Yourself or something like that. And Bruce like slowly turns his head and looks at me and he's just like, what the fuck are you going to be doing at Carnegie Hall? And right then and there, I should have known it. I should have known, like, this dude, he don't know a thing about me. You know, I assumed he did and shit, but he didn't fucking know a thing. I tried to explain it, and he was like, you're gonna, what? You're talking there? You're just talking. Yeah, I don't know. Good luck with that, Kev, you know. I was like, okay, thanks, Bruce, you know. And went over to talk to Dave Klein. He's like, what'd he say? He's gonna do Carnegie Hall? I was like, he's thinking about it. Next day is the first day of the shoot. Very easy. It's a diner scene. Bruce and Tracy are sitting at a table at a diner across from one another. If I can do anything in this world, it's shoot two dudes at a diner. So we're getting all set up and whatnot, and how I like to direct, generally speaking, is I don't get in there and fucking like, hey man, there are people that get into the artsy-fartsy of it and shit. I like to think we're all professionals. You know what you're doing. I'll tell you if you're way off the path and shit. Other directors do it differently. Other directors like to be kind of in the moment or of the essence or make it seem like the great and powerful Oz created and all. Where they're like, in this scene, you are an antelope. And all these people are lions, but they don't know that you're an antelope. Act. And I can't do that. That just makes me feel corny and shit. I try, too. Like, I try in emotional scenes to be like, in this scene, the truth... fuck it. Just pretend to cry. All right, we're going to go. So I generally like to let actors kind of go for a take or two and then get in and make tweaks. You know, that's really my job is just to tweak, I feel. Particularly when the movie's called A Couple of Dicks. You know what I'm saying? It's not like, hey, man, get to the soul-searing truth of the scene, will you? You know, it's like, we're making a comedy and shit. Boys do their take, and I watch them do the take, and it's totally fine, funny stuff in it, but not quite, you know, what I was looking for in some areas and shit. So I'm like, you know what, let's roll one more. Let's go again, real quick. Do another take and shit. I'm like, they just need some tweaking, and that's when I get up and decide to direct and shit and saunter over. I'm like, all right, man, Trace, that was awesome. It was really funny. The thing you said about the kangaroo, fucking kick my ass. That was really, really funny. What I want you to do on this take is do the kangaroo thing, but make sure after you say it, go, what? Like that thing you did, do the what thing, and at the end, cap the whole thing with that look to Bruce, the cute look after he says his thing, man. Right on. We'll do that. We'll be good to go. Move over to Bruce. I'm like, what's up, boss? That was fucking excellent. That was great. We're going to go one more. You heard the things I was telling Tracy. Do me a favor. On your side, what I want you to change is that when you say that thing about Obama, you just got to be like, stop it. Like that, like say, stop it, you know. And then you want to, basically, when Tracy's talking about the kangaroo, you want to come around and give him that Bruce Willis fucking look. Like, what are you, some kind of idiot? Kind of like the one you're giving me right now. Yes, that's it. We do that, man, we're totally good to go. And he's just like, okay, Kev, go back to the monitor. I was like, all right, man, this you guys, good take and shit. Go back to the monitor, sit down, watch the little monitor, action. They do it again. Tracy does his with his corrections and whatnot. Bruce does the same exact take as the previous take. And I'm watching it going, he didn't do that. He didn't do that look. He didn't do anything. I was like, all right, cut. I was like, Michael Pitt's the AD. Michael, we're going to go one more and shit. So I go over to the boys. I'm like, Tracy, man, it was awesome. The kangaroo thing fucking totally works. If you want to dial it up a notch, that's totally cool. But don't forget to give him the what at the end of the thing. Excellent. Bruce, it was great. It was so good. It was exactly like the first take. I said, don't forget, like when he does that thing, don't forget to come around with the face, and don't forget to say the thing after the Obama thing and whatnot. And he's like, right, you're right, the Obama thing. Okay, go back to the monitor, Kev. I was like, I will. Good luck, guys. Go back to fucking monitor and shit, sit down, action. They started, Tracy does his, Bruce goes again, same exact performance. And I was like, what the fuck, man? Like, is he fucking deaf? Like, how did he not hear it? And I get up to head over, and that's when Bruce does the Bruce Willis turn to look at me. And it stopped me cold. Right in my fucking tracks. That dude shot me the Willis, and I got the Willies, and he communicated in that look, if you come over here one more time, you fat fuck, and try to tell Bruce Willis how to act like Bruce Willis, I'm gonna put my foot up your fucking ass. Yippee-ki-yay, get out of here, you know. That's what I saw, you know, basically in that expression. And so I sat myself back down and whatnot and kind of kept him kind of beat on it. You know, I was just like, I don't know, man. Bruce seems kind of irritated with me and shit. And he was irritated with me. I don't think at the end of the day, Bruce liked me very much. And I think by the end of day one, he was like, oh, this guy's an idiot, you know? Like, he started to get kind of scared and shit like that. And it was kind of tough to reach him because he had a very definite way that he wants to make the movies. You know what I'm saying? And here's the thing. You hire Bruce Willis to play a cop in a comedy, you are kind of playing with a John McClane archetype of sorts. You're hiring the original fucking super cop. So this dude is like, I have to essentially play not only a character, but always be thinking about playing myself in the back of my head, particularly in a movie like this, where you're kind of playing off my image. Because of that, he was much more involved in the making of the movie than any other actor I'd ever dealt with before. Like Bruce would come in, you give out sides on a movie set. Basically, it's a miniature version of the script, about 5-7 pages, whatever you're shooting that day on set. Actors use it to memorize their lines. Everybody has a set so that when you're working on the day of the show, you're like, what's that line after this next? And anybody can pull it out and be like, here it is, and give you your sides. So I walk up and Bruce is standing there and I have my sides in my hand. It's a day we're about to be in shooting, maybe second day, third day. He goes, what are we doing today? And I was like, well, here are the pages. I mean, we're doing scenes 2 and 8 and shit. And he goes, okay. He takes the pages out of my hand. He goes, reads, chuffa, rips a page, throws it away. And I was like, oh, what? He reads the next, chuffa, chuffa, chuffa. He rips 4 pages out of the sides and then hands it back to me and he goes, this is what we're shooting today. And I go, okay. It's just that we were prepared for like 7 pages. He's going, but what's the point of shooting all this shit? It's chuffa. And I said, you keep saying that, boss. What is chuffa exactly? It's chuffa, man. It's fucking chuffa. Chuffa is chuffa. And I was like, I don't know what that means. Like, what is the chuffa part? He's like, chuffa, you don't know what chuffa is? I was like, no. He's like, chuffa, dude. Chuffa is like just bullshit in a script. Shit that just kills time. It's like when you walk into a room and you're like, oh, it's a real cute dog. Hey, where'd that picture coming? All right, where's the bomb, motherfucker? You know. He's like, just get to the fucking bomb line. Never mind the chuffa. And I was like, really? He's like, Kevin, how long have I been making movies? I was like, 25 years. He's got, how long you been making? I was like, 15. He's like, I know. I was like, all right, fair enough. And it helped me in the editing room as well because suddenly I didn't have nearly as much to cut at the end of the day. But more importantly, it made everybody on set happy because like we'd get there at 6 o'clock and we're like, it's 11 o'clock, we're done for the day. We just ran out of material to shoot, you know, thanks to old Captain Chuffa over there. And the poor writers, you know, Rob Marks sit off to the side, tears rolling down their cheeks. Like the Native American who sees you litter and shit, you know? We didn't think it was chuffa, you know? But you don't argue with fucking Bruce and shit. I was like, BW said it's chuffa, it's fucking chuffa. He was that guy, man. He would do weird shit too. Like he, you know, if you've seen the movie, and by now some of you haven't, shit, he talks about, in the movie a few times, he talks about, I want my baseball card, Ava, my daughter's wedding. Those are his 3 beats that his character always hits throughout the movie. I want my baseball card, Ava, my daughter's wedding. He says it a lot and shit throughout the flick. So we shot the scene where he says it. You know, there's one scene in the movie where he actually had those lines and shit. We shot it. Beautiful. He executed it very well and whatnot. We were done. Next day, we're on a completely different set, doing a completely different scene. And out of nowhere, Bruce goes, I want my baseball card, Ava, my daughter. And he's talking to Tracy. And I'm like, this isn't in the script, man. Do I say something? Like, those are lines from yesterday. Like, how old is this motherfucker? Like, is he fucking flashing back? Or like, does he not know? But I'm scared of Bruce Willis. So I'm not going to come over and approach him and talk about it and shit. I'm just like, well, he did that. Let's just let it ride and shit. Next day, completely different scene involving completely different actors. Bruce being the only same actor in the place, doing the scene, everything's fine. Out of nowhere, he's like, I want my baseball card, Ava, my daughter. And I was just like, what the fuck? Does he not know that we shot that already? How many times does he want the baseball card and Ava, his daughter? And what I realized when I was in the editing room is this is what Bruce decided. Bruce has made many movies like this. And over the course of making those movies, Bruce has made a study of the things that make the cut and the things that don't make the cut. So Bruce said, he essentially felt like the scene where he originally said, I want my baseball card, Ava, my daughter, would probably hit the cutting room floor. Probably wouldn't make the final edit. So that would necessitate us to go reshoot those lines because they exist in a scene that wouldn't be in the movie anymore. So just to cover our asses, Bruce said it in every scene of the movie. To give me some choices, you know, for all the ones he took away earlier. And in that way, he was very much like my co-editor on the movie. You know, he's kind of helped to shape it and whatnot. And I could have used his help as a co-cinematographer because obviously that's not my strong suit. Everybody knows I don't really give much thought to the visuals. I do a little bit more now, but back in the day, particularly not at all. I was just like, what's it sound like? I was just waiting for podcasts to be invented, apparently. So I was, we're on set and whatnot. We're doing a sequence. It rained a lot in New York all the time while we were shooting a couple of dicks and shit like that. So I was just like, God, we can't do this one drive-around sequence with Bruce and Tracy and Sean William Scott in the back seat. And we're not going to be able to do it on the fucking very rainy streets of Brooklyn this summer and shit. Finally, we threw in the towel, said we'll just do it on a sound stage, which is weird. We went all the way to New York to shoot New York, and then we went to a sound stage and a blue screen to shoot this driving shit. So we put the boys there in like this kind of makeshift half car and put the blue screens around them and shit. And we do the first master through the windshield, 3 of them, 3 shot and shit. One of my favorite shots in the world. That's all done and whatnot, and we break down. And when you shoot setups, you'll shoot like that. That's the wide. And then you start breaking into the smaller setups, the coverage, where we're going to shoot this guy, this guy, this guy, then this angle, shit like that. So naturally, since Bruce is Bruce, you shoot Bruce first and shit. Bruce is a movie star and whatnot. So I was just like, okay, that's going to be it. We're going into Bruce first, Dave. Dave's the DP, and Dave's like, of course, we're going to shoot Bruce first. I was like, right on. So go over to the car, and I was like, hey, boss, that was great. We're just going to break into the coverage now. We're going to do your close-up. Do one of these. And he goes, what lens you using? And I go, the one that does this to you. And he's like, what is that? And I was just like, well, that's the letterbox, dude. This is the top of the screen. This is the bottom of the screen. And this is your head in the screen. So I'm kind of building for you what it's going to look like, and the shot's going to look like this. And he goes, Kevin, I enjoy pantomimes as much as the next guy. You got to tell me what you're talking about, man. And I was just like, it's the lens, it's the shot. He goes, what lens number, Kevin? I was like, hold on. I go, Dave. Dave's my DP. He goes, yeah. I go, Dave, what lens are we going to shoot Bruce in? And Dave goes, show me your hands. And I go, and Dave goes, 50. And I go, thank you, Dave. And I go, we're shooting you on a 50, Bruce. Now, Bruce was looking at me, but then he looked away just so he could come back with that fucking... He literally fucking turned around, dropped a McLean on me and shit like that. And he was just like, why did you just ask Dave what lens you were using? And I was like, what? Because I showed him my hands. And he goes, yeah, why? And I was like, because he knew the lens. He goes, you don't? And I go, no. I said, I don't really know my lenses, boss. I was like, it's a big thing in this business. Everyone knows I'm kind of an idiot when it comes to that thing. I'm not so much a filmmaker as much as the clown prince of filmmaking. And he's like, I'm starting to fucking agree with that. He's like, what do you mean you don't know the lens? I was like, I don't. I never bothered to learn my lenses. He's like, why not? And I was like, I don't know. And he's going, but I just don't understand this, Kevin. You're a fucking director, man. You have 2 jobs. Knowing the lenses is one of them. I was like, I know, man. I just never learned the lenses because I showed Dave my hands. And he just picks based on how far my hands are, Bruce. And he's like, stop crying. I was like, I will. He's like, do me a favor. Don't ever tell anybody in this business that you don't know your lenses, man. Directors are supposed to know their lenses. And I was like, all right. Are you feeling okay? Feeling confident enough to shoot the scene? He's like, yeah, Kevin, I know what lens is on there. Go back to your seat. And I was like, okay. Went back to my seat, sat down. Dave Klein came over. He's going, was he just yelling at you again? I said, yeah. He said, was it because you don't know your lenses? I said, yeah. You were right. I should have learned them a long time ago. It was weird. It was just a different breed of cat. You know what I'm saying? Like, I was used to dealing with friends and people I'd worked with for years and shit. Bruce was completely different. And I realized what it was. I had never worked with a true movie star before. Please don't tell Ben Affleck I said that. Bruce was a true movie star. Bruce has been around in this business a quarter of a century. He has longevity on his side, something a lot of people don't have in that business. People are short timers, man. Like back in the day, a Cary Grant would live on for like 20, fucking 30 years and shit like that. Now, the attention span is very, very short, and people want fucking replace it. We want somebody else. Like, here's Matt McConaughey, fuck him. All right, here's Ben and Matt, fuck them. All right, here's the next guy. They've replaced people very quickly now. So it's impressive that Bruce is still sticking around, you know what I'm saying? Because Bruce's contemporaries haven't fared nearly as well. Bruce was the king of the fucking 80s. In 1985, boom, he fucking exploded in Die Hard. He had already kind of exploded in a smaller way on TV with Moonlighting, but fucking Die Hard exploded his shit big time. And he was like contemporaries with fucking people like who don't work anymore. You know what I'm saying? Like Bruce puts out 2 or 3 movies a year. Some cats he came up with, his partners in Planet Hollywood, like Sylvester Stallone is desperately trying to bring the 80s back with his last 3 movies, Rocky, Rambo, and he may do it with the Expendables. He's getting real fucking close, but so far he hasn't enjoyed the success that he enjoyed in the 80s. Arnold Schwarzenegger, I don't even know what he does anymore. I haven't seen that motherfucker in a movie for years, you know? Clearly he's out of the business. And then there are other people like Steven Seagal, like people who came after Bruce. Steven Seagal was driving down fucking Sunset Boulevard in Los Angeles months back, and I look up and I saw a billboard that had Steven Seagal in it. And I was like, did I just hit the flux capacitor? And go back in time? Who has a fucking Steven Seagal billboard up? And it was for the TV show, Steven Seagal, lawman and shit. They're like, this time it's real. And apparently they took Steven Seagal, who's an action movie star, and deputized him and put him in charge of a town and shit. And he was like, stop jaywalking. Or I'll karate chop you. You know, it was just like, so he had moved on to like reality TV and shit. Bruce, still working. Bruce, 3 movies easily a year, sometimes 2, usually 3. Bruce is the last man standing, which is weird because he was in a movie called that. He's been around for fucking years, and he has longevity on his side, and he's used to fucking people being told yes, and he's used to people being scared of him, and I became scared of him very fucking quickly. He's used to professionals, and I'm not quite the professional he's used to working with. I'm the guy that's just like, Bruce, do you like pussy? Me too, yeah. So it was weird. It was a weird kind of environment and vibe on the set and shit like that. And for the longest time, I was just like, I really honestly don't feel this motherfucker likes me at all and shit like that. And I remember there was only like one time in the whole show, it was kind of toward the end, where he started vibing on me and feeling like, maybe Kevin thinks I don't like him or some shit like that. And it was this sequence where we were doing, what was this? Tracy and Bruce in the motel room. And Tracy has just looked at this nanny cam and he thinks his wife's cheating on him and shit. Bruce comes in, they share some words. And I essentially wanted Bruce to kind of be there for him in this way I was kind of hoping he would do and shit. They did the scene once, totally fine. Bruce is great, Tracy's great, but it was missing the thing that I was kind of looking for and shit like that. So I'm like, let's go again. Do another take, still not there. Do another take, we're on about the 5th take. And, you know, I'm so terrified of fucking Bruce, I just won't go over and ask him to do shit. Like, 'cause back in the day, that's what I'd do. 5 takes, like I'd pull Jason Lee aside, I'd be like, smack, smack, do it right, and put him back out there, you know. But I couldn't with Bruce. I was just like, I was hoping he would just lucked into it, that maybe he would just kind of like accidentally do the performance I was looking for. I was just looking for one specific delivery on one of his lines and shit. And so it comes to about the 5th take, and we wrap it, and Michael Pitt, the AD, turns to me and he's just like, you want to check the gate, you want to do another one? Checking the gate means we look inside, make sure there's no schmutz. If there's no schmutz, we go on to the next setup. If there's schmutz, we have to reshoot that just in case the hair is in the gate of the film and it fucks up the film and shit. So I'm like, God, do we want to go again? Like, because I'm not going to go over there and fucking ask him for what I want. And if he's not getting there, is that ever going to happen? I was like, you know what, Michael? Check the gate. We're good. I got what I need. He's like, you sure? I was like, totally. Go check the gate. So Michael's like, checking the gate, moving on. They go, start the new setup. And I'm sitting behind the monitor and whatnot. And Adam Siegel, one of the producers on the movie, great guy, sitting right next to me and shit. I'm in my chair, I was just sighing. He was like, what's the matter? I was like, I don't know. I just feel like, you know what, Adam? Hold on one second. And I go, Michael, hold the flag on the plate. We might go one more. Let me talk to the boss. And he goes, yeah? And I said, yeah, hold on. Went over to look for Bruce. And Bruce was leaning on a wall of the set, just being cool, you know. just hanging out and shit like that, and fucking, looking imposing as all hell and whatnot. And I saw him from a distance, and I waited a few minutes and worked up my courage and was like, "Hey, boss, how you doing?" He's like, "Hey, Kevin, what's up?" I was like, "Would you mind if we went one more take on that?" He'd go, "Why? It wasn't good?" I was like, "No, it was good. It was just, there was something I was looking for that we didn't quite get." And he was like, "What?" And I was like, "It's this, and I'm looking at him, and I'm like, this motherfucker's gonna yell at me. Like I could feel it. You know the way how dogs feel a hurricane coming? Like I was just like, I should run for the hills. Like I feel it, but I'm just like, I'm gonna pursue it and shit. And he's like, "What is it?" And I was like, "You know what, boss? Forget it. I'm sorry. That was stupid. I'm gonna go back to the chair." And he goes, "No, really, what is it?" Because ultimately, at the bottom of it all, he is an actor, and actors want to please and shit. So he's like, "What? And I was like, "I don't know, I just feel stupid telling you." He's like, "Just tell me." And I was like, "I don't know, I should." And he's like, "Kevin, you better fucking tell me right now." I was like, "Okay." I was like, "But you're gonna yell at me." He goes, "No, I'm not. I never yell at you." And I was like, "Yeah, you do. Lots." He's like, "No, I don't." I was like, "Bruce, you have yelled at me. It is kind. I don't care. I could take it, but you have." He's like, "Kevin, I don't yell at you." I was like, "I have." He goes, "Kevin, I'm gonna start fucking yelling at you if you don't fucking get to it." And I was like, "Okay." That line that you have with Tracy, after Tracy, tells you that he saw the nanny cam, you say, "I've been there before." He's like, yeah. "I didn't do it?" I said, "No, you did it. You did it each time, but I was looking for something a little bit different on it." And he was like, "What?" And I was like, I was kind of hoping you could deliver it the way David Addison delivered a similar line in season 2 of Moonlighting. In the episode, I think it was called Every Daughter's Father is a Virgin, where Maddie thinks that her dad's cheating on her mom, and at one point you had to say something really comforting to her, and I was kind of looking for that Please don't look at me like that, Bruce. And Bruce did, this was fucked up. This was real. I wasn't prepared for this and shit. He did the thing, in show business, so people tend to put a little bit of panache performance into shit and whatnot. Somebody tells you something that shocks you or makes you mad. Generally speaking, you launch. Like, fucking what the fuck? Bruce put a little bit of style onto it and shit like that. So I said that thing about him. I wanted him to do a David Addison and shit like that. And he goes, and he does this thing where he turned but came back. So he's like, I forgot what I was going to say, but now I remember, Kevin. Problem is, when he did that, I flinched. It was a pussy move, I know. But I gotta tell you, he's an imposing dude. He's fucking strong. I don't know, he's like 50. He's fucking way better shape than I am. His muscles on top of muscles and shit. Good, looks like he's cut from marble. So when he turned around like this, I literally went. And he was like, "Did you just flinch?" And I said, "Yeah, but it was just," he's going, "Did you think I was gonna hit you, Kevin?" And I was like, "No, man, no, it was just, I was too close and blah, blah, blah." And he goes, "Did you just ask me to give a performance that I gave 25 years ago?" I said, "No, man, I didn't." He's like, "You did. I heard it. You asked me to do a David Addison." "Did you literally ask me?" He's like, "You do that with other actors? Do you ask Ben Affleck to do one of the stupid movies he's done?" And I said, "Well, Jersey Girl." And he's like, "I don't know jokes, Kevin." He's just like, "Listen." He's going, "It is the most insulting thing in the world to come up to an actor, ask them to do something they did before, let alone something they did fucking a quarter of a century. What makes you think I'd fucking remember that?" And I was just like, "I don't know, man. I was just sitting over there. It was a real fucking stupid move, man. I'm sorry." He's like, "Go back to your fucking chair, Kevin." I was like, "I will. I'm so sorry." And rushed back to my chair and shit, and sat down, and I was real quiet and whatnot. And Adam Siegel's sitting next to me. He's like, "What's the matter, man? You're sweating more than usual." I was like, nothing, man. Let's watch this. And Michael Pitt goes, "Action." Take begins and shit. Bruce is performing, doing the same fucking performance that he did. And I'm sitting there watching it, and I'm just like, what a waste of time. And now he's going to tell people I flinched. And fucking, for the rest of the show, people are going to come up to me and be like, "I thought so." Walk away and shit. I'm watching the monitor. Something amazing happened. Bruce Willis just disappeared. Jimmy Monroe, the character he was playing in the movie, disappeared. And for one magnificent, glorious line, David Addison appeared. I was looking at that monitor, and suddenly I was fucking 16 years old, sitting on the couch with my mom sleeping on the chair and just watching Bruce Willis and being amazed and loving him and shit like that. It was flawless. It was like I had been transported back in time to the set of Moonlighting, and he fucking did it and shit. Take ends. I don't say anything. I'm just like, check the gate, Michael. We're good. We're good. And I'm sitting there, and I can't share it. You know what I'm saying? I'm so quiet. I'm just sitting beside myself like, I reached him. I reached the monster. And Adam Siegel's sitting next to me and shit. He's going, I gotta tell you, man, like, I wouldn't say this out loud, but there was one line in there where he kind of sounded like a little bit like David Addison. I was like, it was David Addison. He's like, what are you talking about? I was like, he did David Addison. I went over there and asked him to do David Addison, and he did. And he goes, you actually talked to him? I was like, yeah, I went over there, and I was just like, hey, man, like, can you do it kind of like David Addison? And he was like, did he yell at you? I was like, no, he didn't yell at me, because I went over there like a director. I said, motherfucker, you give me a David Addison. I'm tired of all this bullshit. You get out there, and then, oh, shit, here he comes, you know. So we were all quiet and whatnot, and fucking Bruce likes to saunter, and he was just kind of sauntering around and whatnot. Me and Adam are kind of sitting there pretending not to talk about Bruce at all, pretending not to even notice him and shit like that, talking amongst ourselves, and Bruce was just doing the saunter, looking around, thinking about how he is Bruce Willis. Comes up to us, his eyes casually fall on me, and he goes, that was for you, Kev. And it was weird because I wouldn't say that he didn't care. I think he cared about the movie a lot, but he'd been through it so often. He had made movies for so long. He's like, I could do this in my sleep, dude, and what you're giving me here is not that fucking challenging. Trust me, I can get us through this. But I was used to people that were like overgivers, you know what I'm saying? Like I was used to people like George Carlin. George Carlin was like, George, aside from being the master of this, George loved acting and loved it like you fucking read about. It's something that I always kind of knew and knew even more when I read his biography after he passed and whatnot. And it was, you couldn't keep him down. You couldn't keep him off a set. He was so inquisitive, so willing to give and shit like that, just eager, wanted to be an actor from a young age and shit. Like we were on the set of Jersey Girl, and it's me and fucking him and Ben getting ready to do a scene and shit like that. Jennifer was going to be doing the scene too, but she wouldn't come until later in the rehearsal, so it's just us two. And before they start, George goes, Kevin, I just wanted to tell you, I've been reading the script, and there's a character, Greenie, who I'm always giving shit to, and I don't quite understand why I give him shit, but I just want you to know that I came up with a backstory for it, and I wrote it, and I memorized it, and I've since threw away. I'm not going to refer to it, but I want you to know that if you see a look on my face that communicates I know what's going on, it's because I've conducted this backstory. It's not going to interrupt the flow of your story, but it's there in case you need to rely on it in some way. And I fucking turned to Affleck. I'm like, why can't you be this fucking good? But he was a consummate professional, you know what I'm saying? Like he treated, even though film wasn't his first fucking gig, he treated it like it was. He put everything into it and whatnot. And just like he did in the stage show. And the reason I wanted to work with him wasn't because I thought he would be such a great actor. I just loved George Carlin. Like George Carlin gave me something to do with my entire fucking life. You know what I'm saying? Like up until that moment, and granted that moment I was like 10 years old, so I wasn't really thinking about what to do with my life, 10 or 11. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't really have people I identified with. As a fat kid, I didn't play sports and shit, so I didn't identify with athletes. Movie people were in another world, so I liked seeing shit, but I didn't identify with R2-D2, you know. I was like, well, I am short and fat as well, but you know. But I never really kind of identified with anybody until I saw Carlin at Carnegie. My father used to bring me comedy albums home. He worked at the post office. Some guy used to sell albums, I guess, at the post office, or they used to steal them from the mail, perhaps, but I never asked. He would bring home, you know, maybe he might have been like, this is from the Columbia Record House for my son. But he would give me albums, and I'd play them ad nauseum, like Red Fox and fucking Bill Cosby, and George Carlin was my favorite. And one day my father was like, that comedian, George Carlin, the guy that you really like, they're going to do a TV show about him. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, HBO, there's a stand-up special. And I was like, get out of here. He's like, yeah, you want to watch it? I was like, yeah, we just got an HBO. And it was Carlin at Carnegie. I think it was 1982, so I was like 12 years old. So my mom's like, are you sure we could watch this with him? And my dad's like, yeah, he's Catholic. Don't worry about it. Now, Carlin at Carnegie, one of the most seminal stand-up specials of all time, opens with George Carlin taking to the stage at Carnegie Hall in New York and saying, have you ever noticed that the people who are against abortion are people you wouldn't want to fuck in the first place? So I'm sitting next to my father and my mother, and my father's like, ah! And my mother's like, that's not appropriate. She's going, he's going to ask questions, Don. And my father's like, no, he won't. And I was like, what's abortion, Mom? And she's like, oh, I knew it. And she took off and shit. And my father's like, don't worry about her. Let's watch. And he was way into it and shit. And then at a certain point in the evening, and Carlin was a magician with words and whatnot, and the smartest human being I ever met. And even in his entertainment, even as he just stood on stage, the shit he said was insanely fucking smart and whatnot. But he would also do dopey shit as well. Like he started doing the Rice Krispies humor and the humor about Tippy, his dog, who farted and whatnot. And like, if I can lick my own balls, I'd never leave the house. All that shit. My mom would come out of the kitchen and rejoin, and she'd be like, oh, I like dog humor, you know, and she'd sit down and be into it. And I was like, this guy can work on a couple different levels. He's doing like the obvious observational humor and shit, but he's talking about shit, and he's using, more impressively, he's using the foulest fucking language I've ever heard in my life. We were raised Catholic. Nobody cursed in our house. My mother was always the person to be like, I hope you go to H-E double hockey sticks, you know, which is a cute curse, but still a curse because she's wishing you to hell. But with a nice name and shit, you know. So we didn't curse in our house. And here was this man who was allowed into our living room to say profane things. And my parents respected him. And I was just like, holy shit, this is what I want to do. I want to sit around and be on a stage or write things and talk about things and just express myself the way I want to. And apparently you don't have to worry about fucking cursing. I didn't think George was stupid. I always tell you when you're young, if you curse, you sound unintelligent. George's the smartest fucking person I ever met and shit. And the dude said some heinous things. And I remember watching that night, and I was never like, I want to do that for a living, but you could be damn sure years later, when I had to get up on a stage and talk about Clerks for the first time in front of an audience, the first person who went into my mind was do it like Carlin. Just own that stage, get up there and like talk like you know what you're talking about. So he was a teacher, you know, he was a role model, and he was the dude that, like, when I was young, I'd turn my friends on and be like, you gotta listen to this dude's fucking genius and blah, blah, blah. Years later, when I was able to make a movie, I was making Dogma, I was like, let's reach out to George Carlin and see if he wants to play Cardinal Glick. And I was on an episode of Conan O'Brien, he was on that night as well, and his wife of many years had just died a few weeks prior. So at the show, I brought a script, so I'm like, if I run into him, I want to be able to say, hey man, here's a script. Saw him, ran into him, gave him the script, said thank you very much and whatnot. And I remember he did like a piece that night on the show where it was the only time I ever saw George. I wouldn't say he certainly didn't bomb, but you could tell he wasn't there because his wife had just passed and shit. 2 weeks later, we went out to dinner in Los Angeles at the Four Seasons. Brunch actually, and we were talking about the movie and shit, and he was asking questions, and his biggest question, he's like, I gotta ask you this, because this will have a lot to do with whether or not I can even make the movie. I was like, okay, shoot. And he's going, I know I'm playing a cardinal, and cardinals generally don't get married, at least that we know of. He said, but my wife just died, and I really can't take my ring off, so what I'm thinking about doing is wearing a Band-Aid over it in the scene. Would that bother you in any way? And I was about to cry. I was like, that is the fucking most sweetest thing I've ever heard, man. And it's coming out of this dude. The dude is like, you wouldn't want to fuck him in the first place. Like that guy. And I was so touched. I was like, George, please, by all means, wear 3 Band-Aids. Don't worry about it. We can always digitally erase it or something. Like, don't, but absolutely do whatever makes you feel comfortable. And we got along swimmingly. He would come to the set and shit and do his part. George was the kind of guy, as a comedian, that never felt the need to, like, be on, make you laugh. Some comedians you're around, they're constantly working. I love Tracy Morgan to death, but you need to sleep a week before you hang out for a day with Tracy. Tracy, he fucking goes and goes. It's like somebody turns him on and the batteries are eternal, and he's just like the ever-redder bunny, ever-ready Energizer bunny, whatever. He was the kind of guy, like, we're making Cop Out and shit like that. You know, like, I don't know if you're married, got a girlfriend. Whenever I go away with my wife, she overpacks. There's usually like 3 bags for 2 days. I'm like, why would you do that and shit? Tracy overpacked like he was going away for 2 months. So he came to the set not with the standard 2 suitcases, but 26 suitcases, all packed full of funny that he was ready to deliver. It was great, you know, especially when Captain Chuffo was ripping pages out of the script. But George never felt the need to make you laugh. You just sit there and have a conversation with him and whatnot. And every once in a while he'd say something witty, but he was never the guy that was just like, oh my God, you got to hear this, and doing a performance for you and shit. Like, you just be around him. He's comfortable, easy to be around, so smart. I just love to hear him talk and shit. And he was always willing and game to come out and play because he loved acting and shit. And so, like, Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, dude literally came out just to fucking pretend to blow some dude. But did it with such panache and class. Like, if fucking we do the first take, he comes up to me. He goes, Kevin, this is the rules of the road. Do I believe them? Or do they believe them? I was like, no, your character actually, you kind of believe them. You're not lying to these cats, you believe them. Okay, he's like, that's important, the emotional truth of the scene when I suck a dick. I was like, totally. And he did it, you know, he was very fun. Does that, and it's so fucking memorable and whatnot. And he was done shooting that and whatnot, and he got on the van, transport van, to go back to base camp, because we were out in the middle of boonies, and I got on a van with him, chit-chatting with him. And I remember the conversation was about music, popular music, and he was just like, I can't listen to popular music. He's going, it's just the same fucking song. Somebody wants love, somebody's not giving love, somebody's gonna give love, nobody getting laid. He's like, they've been recording the same song since I was a kid, so I kind of stopped listening. I was like, right on. I was like, did you have a good time? He was like, I did. But do me a favor, man. Next time you pull me out to do something, why don't you write me my dream role? And I was like, I would love to. What's your dream role? And he's like, I want to play a clergyman who strangles 6 children. I was like, I'll give it a shot, George, you know. And so I wrote Jersey Girl, and so when I wrote Jersey Girl, I wrote him a big lead in it and shit like that, and I sent it to him with a cover letter saying, I want you to play Ben Affleck's dad in the movie, so let me know what you think. And he called me up and whatnot after he read it. I said, what'd you think? And he goes, well, there's a girl in it, but I don't strangle her. I was like, we're gonna have to save that for the next movie. He's like, I'm in. And he was just such a dedicated professional about it, just a thing of joy to be around forever. And Clerks 2, we couldn't get him into. There was nothing in the movie that called for him. But Zach and Miri, we tried to get him to play the part that Tom Savini played, the guy that sells them the sound stage and whatnot. And George was always on a stage like 250, 270 nights out of the year and shit, so it was tough to get him schedule-wise if you didn't map it out well in advance. So we called him up and whatnot, and he couldn't do it. He was going to be on stage. When we were shooting, we couldn't move our dates and shit, so he's like, let me talk to Kevin. I got on the phone with him. He's like, it's not going to work out this time. I was like, I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry, but I understand. Like, you're busy and shit. Don't worry about it. He's like, we'll do it on the next one. And then he died shortly thereafter and shit. And it hit me in a weird way, because when he was gone, we weren't, like, best friends. Like, I don't want to paint it like, I went to George Carlin's house. He'd call me every once in a while. On the set, we'd chit-chat and whatnot. But it's not like we hung out or anything like that. But there was a weird sense of profound loss when the guy was gone. For me, even for somebody that, like, I wasn't related to him. I didn't fuck him. We weren't best friends, you know? But he meant something to me in a big bad way. And when he died, you know, immediately somebody was like, hey, do you want to write an article for Newsweek? And I was like, yes, somebody has to fucking champion this man, and blah, blah, blah. And you just kind of go into, I wouldn't call myself a George Carlin survivor, but he had just died, and I kind of went into the mode of, like, we got to honor him, bury the dead, blah, blah, blah. And it wasn't until months later that his daughter Kelly called me up, and she was just like, we're putting together this book, Dad's autobiography, and I was wondering if you had any pictures from the Dogma set. And I was like, yeah, Scott's got a bunch, man. I'll put you in touch with Scott. And I was like, how you doing? She was like, good, it's tough, but I got to tell you, it's really nice. Like, everyone in my father's world has kind of welcomed me with open arms and shit. They've been really nice. In his absence, I still feel him. And she's like, how you doing? And it was the first time that I really thought about it. I started crying. I was just like, I miss him so much. I said, it's so weird because he wasn't really a friend of mine or a relative or even somebody I'd fuck. And she was like, what? And I was like, that's your father's influence. I said, but like, I miss him, and I'm so mad at him. She's like, why are you mad at him? I was like, because he was the smartest man I ever met, and he told me he was going to live to be 109, and he didn't. That broke my heart, man. Now I can't believe anything. And she's just like, really? It took you that long to figure out my father was human? And I was like, no, well, technically a long time ago I figured it out and shit, because he said you can never piss and fart at the same time, and I've perfected that, And she's like, he told me, because I had told George once. We were on the set of Jersey Girl. We had some free time back in those days, and we were sitting around one day. It was quiet. George liked to do the crossword puzzle sometimes, shit. So did Mosier, and they were quiet. And finally, I was like, hey, George, do you know it is possible to shit and fart, to piss and fart at the same time? And he was just like, is that down or across? I loved him to death. He was such an amazing role model, and anytime I kind of step on the stage, I think about George, man. I think about, without him, I never would have thought about doing this. I never would have had the confidence to stand up here with a microphone. He was a traveler, and he was inquisitive, and he wanted to know things, and I wanted to be just like him and shit. So losing him was kind of a big deal, and it was an even bigger deal when you're working on a set with people that weren't clearly as fucking enthusiastic, as George always was. But it was a different breed of flick, that Couple of Dicks picture. So much so they changed the fucking title on us. Like, it was a Couple of Dicks for a long time, and then suddenly Warner Brothers had done the due diligence. I guess they saw what we went through on Zack and Miri, and they start calling up the networks and being like, hey man, like, we have a movie called A Couple of Dicks. Bruce Willis, Tracy Morgan play cops. Ha ha ha. Like, are you guys gonna have a hard time advertising that? And they're like, we'll get back to you. And all the networks got back to them. NBC, ABC, and CBS all said we can't run a promo for it before 9 o'clock. And so Warner Brothers was like, our entire marketing campaign includes the Olympics, which start a lot earlier than that. We want to be able to advertise on weekend sports. Like, you got to think about a title change. And we told you the title wasn't locked when you came on. They did from the jump. They were just like, not guaranteed to be able to keep that title. And I was like, nah, it's a genius title. It works. They're like, yeah, we're not guaranteed to keep it. And we weren't guaranteed to keep it. Suddenly they were like, we're going to call it something else. And they started coming up with names that were really fucking tepid and fucking terrible and shit. Just shit like Scandal. Where you're like, what? Like, somebody better show their titties in a movie called Scandal, And I know nobody shows their titties in this movie and shit. Just like kind of weird names, A Couple of Cops. Which is like, wait, how do you go from A Couple of Dicks to A Couple of Cops? Like, that's a literal title. That's what the movie's about and shit like that. They're like, we got to pick soon because the trailer's got to go out. And I'm like, title doesn't really mean that much. I was like, yeah, I mean, you're right. I'd gone through it on Zack and Miri Make a Porno, so I was kind of like, yeah, we can let the title go, because I'd seen what happened to Zack and Miri. That title hurt us. It absolutely hurt us at the box office. So if we hadn't gone through that, I would have been like fucking all 22 and emo about the fucking Couple of Dicks title. Like, you can't have this title. I'm going to die with these dicks in my hands. But they pushed the issue, like, we got to change it and shit like that. And I was like, what do we get called? I was talking to Adam Siegel, again, one of the producers on the movie, and Adam was just like, yeah, it's kind of weird, man, isn't it? And I was like, it's weird, Adam. We had an excellent title. We're going from a fucking Couple of Dicks to, like, the worst title on the planet, A Couple of Fucking Cops. Isn't there anything else we could do? He's like, I don't know, man, but that title is kind of a cop-out, isn't it? And I said, wait a second. I said, that's the title, dude. He goes, what, Cop Out? I said, yes, let's call this bitch Cop Out, man. That's kind of funny. He goes, why is it funny? I was like, because we're copping out on a good title. Like, it'd be funny. I mean, it kind of plays cop out. He's out of his baseball card and shit. He's a cop. It works. But really, for me, it'll always mean, like, they copped out on the fucking title. He's like, let's try. And we went in and asked, and Warner Brothers was like, let's do a title search. And they found out that, who was it? Blake Edwards had it. And Blake Edwards at first didn't want to give it up. And then I sent Blake Edwards a really nice message and shit. And he said, okay, I'll do it for the filmmaker. And he let the title go. And suddenly we were fucking cop out and shit like that. And so in, like, I guess around late January, early February, I was getting ready to go out on the road and promote Cop Out, and I was really dreading it because I was like, ugh, all the press is going to talk about is how we changed the title from a couple of dicks to fucking Cop Out, and that's all I'm going to hear from now until the end of time. The only interview I'll ever give is going to be about changing the title, and the press is going to bug me about the title, and I hate it so much. Then I got thrown off a fucking airplane. And when that happened, suddenly nobody cared about the title. Suddenly everyone was like, you're too fat to what now? And I was like, fly and shit. They're like, get out of here. And that was a horrible experience, man, that I don't really want to go over again, but we'll do it real quickly and real short. It was just kind of shitty, man. And being on a flight, some people have heard the details. You can hear the story elsewhere. I'll just give you the real shadings of it. I had a ticket. I had 2 tickets. I had 3 tickets, me, Jen, and myself. We wanted 3 seats. Now, a lot of people are like, why do you want 3 seats? Because, like, I don't, like, on a plane, some space. I'd like some space and shit like that. Not from her, just from other people and shit. Like, I don't go to a movie theater, sit down next to somebody and be like, hello. Especially when there's a bunch of other empty seats and shit. So, you know, we're flying on Southwest. It's a very affordable airline. I said, let's just grab 3 seats. We'll have a row to ourselves. We can lay down if we want, or just not have somebody sitting next to us and shit. So we had 3 seats in the morning. Jen, I'm supposed to go up to San Francisco, do a podcast with Malcolm and shit. And Jen was going to go, but she's like, I'm tired, I'm going to stay home. Do you care? I was like, no, I'm fine. Go to the airport, check in, expecting 1 ticket, 2 come out. So I'm just like, oh shit, 2 tickets. I was like, right on, 2 seats, fine, great. Take my 2 seats, go. Don't need them. Plane's like fucking almost empty and shit. And I'm sitting in my 1 seat. I'm not spread out over 2, seatbelt on and shit like that. Don't have the armrest down because why bother? There's 2 empty seats next to me. Take the flight out, go do the thing with Malcolm, come back to the airport, and it's early, and I've got 2 seats. So I'm like, fuck, maybe I can get on an earlier flight, and Southwest does that. Very good about, like, you get there early, jump in, get on another flight and shit like that. So I went up to the desk, and I was just like, hey, man, can I get on an earlier flight back to Burbank? And they were just like, yeah, you take this, go down to the gate, and chick there will deal with you. So all right, go through security, go down to the gate. Chick's there at the desk, and I was like, hey, I was kind of hoping to get on this flight. And she's like, this flight's pretty booked. Like, if everybody checks in, that's accounted for, like, there's going to be 1 seat open. And I was like, that's great, man. That's all I need is 1 seat, man. I just want to go back to Burbank and shit. And she goes, well, you have 2 tickets. And I was like, yeah, but I don't need 2 seats, man. 1 seat, totally do. If you get me on that plane, man, that'd be awesome. And she goes, well, what about the safety concerns? And I was like, are we under attack again? Like, what do you mean the safety concerns? And she's like, what about you have to be able to lower your armrest, sir. And I was like, what? Oh, armrest. You think I'm fat? I said, oh, no. I said, look, I am fat, but I ain't too fat to fly on that plane. I said, there's a big point of pride with me. I can still buckle the seat like a big boy on a Southwest plane. Like, don't worry about it. I'm totally good. I was like, I may look it, and I am fat. I said, but not too fat to fit in the seat. 1 seat's going to be fine. She's like, okay, go over there. We'll call you and shit. And they eventually called me. And the chick goes, here's your ticket. Rush to the gate right now because they're loading up. They're closing the door. And I was like, okay. And then I was looking for my other ticket. And I was like, where's my other ticket? And she's going, you only have 1 seat, remember? I was like, I know, but I gave you 2 tickets. You just gave me 1 back. And she's like, you got to get on the plane. There aren't 2 seats. I was like, ma'am, I know, but I gave you 2 of something. You gave me 1. I think I got fucked. And she goes, oh, they'll just reimburse you. And I was like, okay. And she's like, go to the gate. And I was like, all right, thanks. And I go down to the fucking jetway, and that desk, it's a desk that serves 3 gates. I would say a good 20 yards from the jetway gate and shit. Leave her, go down to the jetway gate, give the ticket to the dude, go down to the jetway, and there's a dude in the jetway who's coming off the plane and shit. Got a manifest in his hand or something like that. Looks at me, and he goes, who are you? And I was like, I'm the guy, the standby guy. They told me I could come board. And he goes, are you mama? And I couldn't hear what he said. And I said, did you just reclassify me as fucking luggage, dude? And he goes, what did you say? And I go, oh shit, he's not a cursor. So I was like, nothing. I said, did you reclassify me as luggage? And he goes, no, I asked you if you were revenue. And I said, revenue? What's that? He goes, revenue means did you pay for your ticket? And I was like, what do you mean? They give this shit out free? And he goes, no, if a replacement ticket or something like that. I was, I said, no, I paid for my ticket. I paid for 2, but I only got 1, but that's all I need and shit like that. Yeah, I paid. I'm revenue. And he's like, right on. Get on the plane. So I go to the plane. There's a chick in the doorway, and the chick recognizes me, looks at me, and she's like, ah. And I was like, oh, right on. She's a fan. She's like, this is going to be so much fun. I was like, I know, but it wasn't. So I get in, and she goes, plane is full. I come around the corner, and I see everything, like just packed to the rafters, except for the front seat, left bulkhead, if you're facing the back of the plane, middle seat between 2 women, one like 40-something chick, one 80-something chick, and whatnot. And I'm like, if this is what it's got to be, it's got to be. It's an hour flight. I don't give a shit. I'll talk to the old ladies. I don't care and whatnot. So I go to sit down, and I was like, wait, let me put my bag away. And I put my bag up and whatnot, and then I go to sit down again, and I was like, oh, shit, I need my headphones. I went and grabbed my headphones. And then I finally sit down with my headphones, getting ready and shit, pull the seatbelt to go put it on. And as I go to click it, I look up and I see coming down the jetway is the chick from the desk. And I got real fucking wigged out because she's looking at me, like eye contact, like she's coming toward me. And for some reason, all my Catholic upbringing, I was like, my mother must have died. Like, I was like, that's the only reason a stewardess or somebody who worked a ticket gate would come talk to me on the plane, like, Mr. Smith, I'm sorry to tell you that your mother has passed. Would you come off the plane? I'd be like, this is an amazing service. Like, yes, thank you, and shit. She comes up to me, and my mother didn't die. She goes, Mr. Smith, you're going to have to come with me right now. And I was like, why, did my mother die? And she goes, no, man. She goes, just please come with me. The pilot asked that you would come off the plane. I was like, why? And she's going, well, there's the safety concern. And I was like, the lady, what do you mean? I was like, safety? I was like, the armrest? And they were up. I was like, look, and I put them down. I was like, these were just up when I sat down. I didn't put them up. I was like, look, again, I'm fat, but I ain't too fat to sit. You can see, look, I can buckle and shit. And she goes, I know, but it's just the armrests aren't supposed to be touching anything. I was like, it's not touching. I said, look, I wear a bulky shirt, man. I would pull it up and show you that it's not flap. It's just a lot of fucking material. I like to wear big clothes. I'm a layers guy, you know, and she's just like, I know, but it'd be really helpful if you would just come with me right now. The pilot's asking you to deplane. And I'm like, lady, please don't do this to me. Like, when I came into the plane, I literally made eye contact with 3 people who know who the fuck I am. If you're asking me to get off this plane, somebody's going to fucking talk. Somebody's going to say something. I'm going to be humiliated. She goes, yeah, can you just come with me, though? And I knew I was losing. I knew I couldn't sway her and shit like that. And then I started to get like, all right, what's my move? I should dig in and be like, fuck you. You can take me off this plane when you pry it from my cold, dead hands. But in a post-9/11 environment, like, I don't fuck around on an airplane, because I would have been like, I ain't going anywhere, and some dude behind me with a fork stabs me. 2 other passengers attack me and kill me, and they're like, he was going ape shit, you know? He was trying to eat everything, or something like that. So I don't want to fuck around. I feel like I'm beat. There's nothing I can do. I'm like, I got to eat it. Fuck it. I got to get up and shit. And I'm like, God damn it. And I get up, and as I get up from my seat, I do the turnaround thing because I'm going to go like this out the aisle, go get my bag. And as I turn around, I guess if I was sitting this way, I turn this way. And as I turn around, because I'm going to exit the aisle, go there, there's a dude sitting 2 rows back in the same seat as me in the middle. Fucking huge. Like, I'm saying that. This dude was a wide fucking dude, a true overweight, really morbidly obese man, seated in a seat between 2 chicks also. That dude's expression on his face was absolute abject terror because we locked eyes. And I looked at him, and my first instinct was to be like, oh, what about him? He's really fucking fat. Look how fat he is. He's fat. But fuck that, I would never throw a fellow fatty under the bus. Or the plane, as it were. So I didn't say anything, but we did make perfect eye contact in that moment and shit, and his eyes communicated to me what he was thinking, and what he said was, please don't tell anyone I'm fat. Please don't tell anyone I'm fat. Please don't tell. So I let it go. I just went and got my bag and fucking took off and shit like that and didn't reveal him. But that dude like stayed with me forever because the expression on his face, it reminded me, remember that moment in Schindler's List where the little kid is running around the camp trying to find a place to hide? And he jumps into the toilet, into the latrine, and then there's 2 kids in there already, and they're like, you can't hide here. And they cut to the kid, and he just kind of looks up like at this light coming down from the toilet lid in the fucking latrine, and you're like, that is so fucking depressing, horrible. That is the worst thing that can happen to a human being. It's exactly like my Southwest Airlines flight. Whole time I was in there, I was just thinking, like, dude, that poor dude looks like that dude. It was just nasty, man. Then they wrote a blog about, like, Captain said, unfortunately, fat people have to buy 2 seats, and we like Mr. Smith, but, he always buys 2 seats. They put out a fucking smokescreen lie, saying I always bought multiple seats. I'd never always done that. I think I did it twice in my life. They also said that the pilot threw me off the fucking plane and shit like that. And I was telling the lady, like, as I'm in the seat, I'm like, ma'am, I can't see the pilot. How can the pilot see me? And she's going, he can see you. He can look around corners. I was like, ma'am, I have to lean all the way out here to look, and I'm still leaning on this lady and shit. I can't see the pilot. She goes, well, the plane has mirrors. And I said, yeah, in the bathroom. I was like, there's no way the pilot can see me right now. She's like, sir, we don't have planes on the phone. I was like, I'm sure you have planes, but nobody even called to say the pilot can see me. Like, it's impossible for this guy to see me. Let me stay in the seat, man. Please, these ladies don't care. I turned to the ladies to my left. I was like, do you care? She goes, it's only an hour flight. I was like, thanks for the fucking help, man. Turned to the other old lady and shit. She was a pruny little old lady and shit. And I was like, ma'am, am I squishing you? And she goes, what? And I go, am I squishing you? And she goes, what? And I go, squish. And she goes, no, I'll have tea. Fucking useless, So they said that the pilot had seen me and said, take him off the plane because there aren't 2 seats for him and people that big need 2 seats. And I'm off the jetway, I'm waiting in the jetway for the chick and she didn't come out. And so then I kind of Charlie Browned it over to the desk where she was and shit. And she comes out of the jetway and she comes up to the desk and she's like, hi, how are you doing? I was like, not fucking good, man. What's going on here, man? And she was like, well, like I told you, the pilot said that, you needed to buy another seat. I was like, that's bullshit. I think that's absolute bullshit. I fit in the seat and I put the armrest down, I buckled and you saw me. And she's going, I'm just telling you what the pilot said. And I was like, but I don't think the pilot saw me. She goes, are you calling me a liar? And I said, no. But I don't think the pilot saw me. She's going, he did. Why would I make that up? Why would I just say that? And I was just like, lady, if I can't see him, how can he fucking possibly see me? It's a corner. I'd have to go like this. I don't think that he saw me. She's like, I assure you, the pilot saw you. And that's the blog they put up. It was all about how the pilot saw me. I was too fat. He made the call. He regrets having to do it, but maybe I should think about eating fewer fucking pieces of cotton candy or some such shit like that. 3 days later, there was a different blog went up, and it told a completely different story. And it was a story about some crew member who maybe made a hasty decision too quickly and told me to get off the plane without checking with anybody else. And I'm like, that's 180 degrees away from the fucking story that you insisted was true. The story that you told me. The reason I had to get off that plane was because they said the pilot said that I needed to buy 2 seats, but now I'm hearing the pilot didn't even see me and shit like that. Right then and there, I was like, I knew it, man. Like, I didn't have to go, and they fucking bounced me. And yet, I went, because I was terrified of getting fucking plugged by a fucking federal air marshal or something. Like, but at the same time, I was like, people on the fucking plane probably saw me, man. This word's gonna get out quick. If the word's gonna get out, it's gonna get out with me. And so I grabbed my phone, I started tweeting about it and shit. And I tweeted for like a good hour and shit. Because before I left the desk, like I was talking, like she was just like, I'm bringing over a manager to deal with you. I wasn't yelling, I wasn't hostile, but I was definitely heated and shit. Brought over the manager, I told him the whole story. He goes, well, here's a brochure, sir, with a phone number on it. If you call these people, they can help rectify the situation for you. I was like, you're kidding me. That's the best you could do is give me a fucking phone number? Keep your phone number, buddy. In about an hour, you're gonna come looking for me, I promise you. And I left and I started tweeting and shit. And sure enough, I was leaning against the wall at one point, and the manager who I dealt with raced in front of me down the fucking jetway and shit. And then all of a sudden he stopped, saw me, rushes back, he goes, you have to stop tweeting immediately. I was like, hey, man, how are you? And he's like, good. How you doing, Mr. Smith? Can you put the phone down, please? And I was like, no, I'm just kind of registering my displeasure. He's like, I know, I've been hearing from everybody. Everyone's really sorry. Look, we're going to take care of you. We're going to put you on the plane first, the next flight out. I said, don't bother, buddy. I got 2 tickets right here because I'm so fucking fat, for 2 seats right up front. And he's like, well, we're going to make sure you get put on the plane first. I was like, don't fucking bother, man. I need to get on the other fucking plane, not this fucking plane and shit. Then he ushers me to the front of the plane and shit, puts me on the plane first before other people and whatnot. So I'm sitting now in the front seat, and everybody that parades by is kind of looking at me because the word has filtered out throughout the airport a little bit and shit like that. So everyone coming down is looking at me, and I just keep going, hi, hi. And they're all going like, it was fucking bad, man. It was really, really fucking tough to deal with and shit. But it's not the first time. Like, what didn't bug me about the weight thing? That's the thing. Everyone's just like, oh, he's so embarrassed he's fat. I've been fat my whole fucking life. That doesn't bother me. I know how to carry the fat and shit like that. I had a really good looking wife. Fat has not stopped me in any way, shape, or form. And but, it's not something you're supposed to be proud of. You're supposed to be, I'm ashamed of all this hateful fat and shit like that and whatnot. So generally speaking, I don't go out there and be like, I'm fat and proud and whatnot. But, I have been known to fucking talk about my weight and talk about it publicly. And, some shit has happened because of my weight from time to time. Like, one time we had a comic book store back west in Westwood. Jay and Silent Bob's Secret Stash, we opened out there. And what was it? It was called Laser Blazer. It was the back of a DVD store on Pico Boulevard in Los Angeles. Guy named Ron Dassa owns the place. And I'd gone in there shopping all the time. And we'd had a secret stash in Westwood on Westwood Boulevard and shit. But eventually, after 4 years, we closed. Brian didn't want to run anymore. We just decided to close it. And that guy, Ron, was like, why don't you bring it and put it in the back of my store? You're in here all the time. And we'll run it for you. I was like, all right. So we moved it into Laser Blazer and shit, and then as we do out here, we like to play poker at the store and have tournaments and whatnot. We were having a tournament at that store one night, about 25 people. And I'm sitting there playing poker. I'm doing rather well. About an hour in, I feel like safe enough to kind of get up, walk away for a few minutes, go take a shit. So I asked Ron, I was like, Ron, where's the fucking good bathroom where I can go? And he's like, there's one right around the corner. And I was like, where people won't hear me. He's like, you make bathroom noises? I was like, loud ones, So he's like, all right, you want to go downstairs, use the bathroom? It's right behind that one wall where the laser disc used to be in your store now. I was like, all right. So I went downstairs and shit. There's somebody standing outside the door and whatnot. And that dude took off. I don't know why and shit, leaving me as the next person to go. Somebody comes out of the bathroom. I say, hey, what's up? I went into the bathroom, closed the door. I get into the bathroom and I'm looking. And there's a toilet that comes right out of the wall. It's kind of like if this was the wall here, it just juts right out. And there's nothing underneath the toilet. There's no pedestal that the toilet's sitting on. It looks like a fucking magic trick, Just a fucking hovering toilet and shit. And I'm no architect or fucking builder, but I look at something like that and I'm like, I wonder if it's on a support beam or something. You know what I'm saying? Because there's nothing holding it up and whatnot. But I was just like, it's fucking, what are the chances, man? Fucking, these things are made to take a lot. I'm sure it's no big deal. Sat down, go take a shit, take my pants down and whatnot, sit, and the toilet goes, And I was just like, it kind of gave a little bit, man. The toilet kind of just slightly gave, like a little bit like a diving board, Like when you sit on a diving board, it goes like that. But then I started doing the math in my head. I was like, all right, when they built the trade towers in New York, they built them so they could sway on the top floors. Maybe it's the same engineering with the toilet. In case of a big windstorm, you just... So I'm sitting on it and whatnot, and I'm feeling not too good about it based on that give. So I was like, just for fucking safety's sake, maybe I'll just hover. I'll do the thing that chicks do in public when they piss, they hover. Nobody ever puts their ass on a toilet seat and shit like that. Chicks just hover on their haunches. So my wife for years, I was like, how do you piss outside? She's like, you gotta hover and move your underwear over here and go like this and shit. So I was like, all right, man, I could probably do that. I've been sitting for years and shit. I could probably shit standing up, not sitting on the bowl totally. So there I am kind of hovering on the bowl, dropping the kids off at the pool, bing, bing. And it's kind of targeting practice at this point because, I'm hovering. If I'm sitting down, the hole goes right through the hole. But now I'm just like, all right, and fire. So I did it, and it kind of worked out and shit. And you know, I was sitting there playing with my phone. I was playing Scrabble while it was happening. I was multitasking and shit. And it was hot, and I was sweating bullets, especially because I'm balancing myself. You know, I'm not at rest. I'm sitting I'm like a skater on ice, trying to maintain balance the whole time. So it's a constant workout just shitting at that point. So I finish and whatnot, and I'm like, all right, I'm going to go for the wipe. And I can't do that in the standing up position. Like, it's just not working and shit. So I was like, I should just sit down. I'm sure everything's fucking fine. Don't be ridiculous. Sit, wipe, go back, play some fucking poker. So I was like, all right. Get the toilet paper, water around my hand and shit, get ready. Sit down in the toilet. Toilet goes, but still good. Now, I'm what you call a front wiper. I don't wipe out back because there's so much chub back here, it's tough to reach around it. So what I do when I shit, I'm sitting down, I wipe from here, like this. And when you do that, you know, it's you're wiping from back to front. And I only learned when we had Harley and we were leaving the hospital, a nurse was like, do you know how to change a baby? And I was like, no, can you show us? And she's like, yeah, and she's showing us, and she's like, you wipe from front to back. And I was like, why you do that? And she's like, because if you wipe from back to front, then you might get fecal matter in her vagina. And I was like, that's why my balls smell. I haven't been wiping properly this whole time, you know? So I'm giving it the wipe and whatnot, front to back and fucking back to front, and drop it in there and shit. And I was like, you know what? I'm feeling it. Pinch, little Kegel in the ass. I'm like, little more. Grab some toilet paper, go to dig from the back, because I'm not getting it. There's an angle, a crevice that I'm not hitting. And there's a rich deposit of minerals there that I'm gonna unearth in a big bad way. So instead of going this way, I go this way. So you're leaning on the toilet a little more, and as I reach back, all of a sudden I heard and I was facing down all of a sudden, man. Like a slalom race, like I was in Cool Runnings. And it all happened so fast, you don't really think about it. You're like, what the fuck happened? Why am I looking at the floor, you know? And I look down, and the toilet is sitting in my pants. Like my pants and my underwear around my ankles. And the toilet bowl is literally fucking resting in my pants. The toilet is wearing my clothes. And I'm still pointed down like this, and I'm like, what's going on? And I look back, and I see that the toilet has cracked in two on the porcelain. So half of the little lip of porcelain is on the wall, the other half is cracked and facing down, and the bowl is going downhill, but it's connected by one very rickety pipe. And the contents of the bowl are going, And I'm like, oh my God, I'm gonna shit my pants, I'm not even wearing them. So I'm just like, this is fucking terrible, man. I don't know how to get out of this. And then I fucking hear from the other side of the door, you okay in there? And I was like, yeah, what do you mean by that? He's like, no, it just sounded a little noisy. I was like, some of us do it differently. I was like, do me a favor, man, can you go get Ron Dassa? He owns this place. He's like, okay. And I hear him walk away, and I'm sitting there going, oh my God, Ron Dassa's coming in. My little dick's hanging out. My fucking pants are being worn by the goddamn bull. I was like, I gotta do something, man. Something's gonna happen, because he opens that door. If he's got a key, I'm fucked, you know? It's just like, it's a bad view all around. So I was like, gotta get off the bull. But if I get off the bull, it may fall into my pants and dump all the shit. So I'm like, I gotta get off this fucking bull, and I just gotta propel myself off it, like in Lethal Weapon 2. So I'm sitting there going like, all right, man, do it like Roger Murtaugh did it, man. Count down and fucking throw yourself off the bull. Like, that's the only way you can do it. So I slowly kind of pull my feet out of my underwear and pants on the one side and the other and shit, and I'm walking like it's the Birds or something, I can't disrupt it and shit like that. And so now I'm just naked from the waist down and whatnot, with my sneakers on. And I'm like, okay, I gotta do this, man. I'm gonna throw myself across, clear the toilet, push as hard as you can with those legs, just fucking boom, bullfrog it over, man. Count of 3. 1, 2, wait a second. Is it 1, 2, 3, or do we go? Why are you doing jokes? Nobody's around to hear it. It's a good point. It was like 1, 2, 3, and I fucking hurl myself across the room, slam into the door and shit. Quick look back and see the toilet going, resting in my pants. Looked like Humpty Dumpty. So I was like, oh my God, I am soaking wet. My hair is so matted. My clothes are fucking, the clothes I'm wearing are very, very wet. I go over and shit, lift up the bowl, slide my gear out, fucking pull it on just as I hear the door and shit. I open the door just to crack, pull Ron, grab him in. The other guy's like, what's going on in there? Slam the door and shit. Ron comes in and I'm like, I couldn't even speak. I was, And he looks down and he sees this broken fucking toilet sitting on the floor and I'm covered in fucking sweat and looking all panicky and shit. And he looks at the toilet and he looks at me and I'm obviously very fucking shaken up and shit like that. And he thinks about the tenuous nature of our business relationship, which is only about 2 weeks old at that point. And he goes, nobody ever needs to know. I said, thanks, Ron. So I had busted a flat-out toilet, so I knew what it was like to be fucking fat. And it didn't bug me, you know what I'm saying? The Southwest thing wasn't about weight. I was like, this fucking corporation lied to me and shit. And I thought that would be the story. Like, fucking, I'm going to go out and tell the world this corporation lied. But I forgot the way more appetizing story is like, fat guy in a little chair. So that's the story they wrote, man, and it was kind of heartbreaking, but it's kind of shit that happens from time to time, and you have to kind of decide what to do with your life at that point. And I decided, as I said, with the help of Malcolm Ingram, to get a fucking bus. So I bought a bus, and now I own a bus, and I travel the country on a bus, and periodically from time to time we get into misadventures on the bus. It's just like BJ and the Bear. One of the misadventures we got into on the bus fairly recently happened when I was traveling up to Canada. I was going up to Montreal to basically do the Just for Laughs comedy festival and shit. And I got up, we were driving, Clovis is my bus driver and stuff, and it was just me and Clovis. We brought another driver, his name was Thomas, because we were gonna go fast and Clovis could drive, sleep, Thomas was driving while Clovis was asleep, and they could switch off. We'd get to Montreal in like 2.5 days or something like that. So we're driving up, and when I drive, I like to, you know, it's my bus, man, and I try to be, I don't try to be a rock star, but I try to enjoy it the way most people would, and I sit there and kind of smoke in the back and whatnot. And I remember the first time I was on the rental bus, I was real quiet about it, I stuffed pillows under the door and shit, opened the window way high and just spoke out of it the whole time, because I didn't want the drivers to be like, hey, it's affecting us back here and shit. And Clovis, who was a driver on a rental bus that I've been on for a few times and shit, one day he pulls me to the side and Clovis goes, Kevin, if you want to smoke on the bus, man, just smoke on the bus. Like, you're renting the bus. You can feel free to smoke. And I was like, what are you talking about? I don't smoke, man. And, you know, smoke was coming out of my mouth as I said it. And he's just like, it's cool. It doesn't affect us. I was like, you sure? I don't want you guys to, like, catch a secondhand high and fucking careen into something. And he goes, Kevin, we drive whole rock bands. You're just one man. Smoke up, man. He's like, I drove Jimmy Cliff, motherfucker. You can do no damage. So I sit in the back of the bus, and as we cross this great land of ours and shit, I like to imbibe and kind of write and create and look at the landscape as it goes and whatnot. But as soon as I head up to the Canadian border, I'm not having nothing on that fucking bus, because I like going to Canada, you know what I'm saying? I'm not fucking around any way, shape, or form. I go up fucking clean, because bringing weed to Canada is like bringing sand to the beach anyway, you know? It's like, once I get up there, it's gonna be fine and shit. So divest myself of all weed by the time we get to the border, every time out and shit. And usually what happens is you get up to the border, I'll be in the back sleeping or something. Clovis gives over the passports. The guy will look at the passports. They'll be like, Kevin Smith. That Kevin Smith? Like the fat Kevin Smith? And he's like, yeah. He's like, is he in there? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, can we come on the bus? And he's like, yeah. So one day, like, Clovis always tells me, he's like, just give me the passports. If there's trouble, if they need to see you, I'll come knock on your door. So we're sleeping in the back and shit, me and Jen. All of a sudden, I heard us pull in, stop. I know what's going on and shit. I know that, they're showing the passports. Then I hear some walking. Then I hear on our back door. And I go and open the door, and it's two border guards with massive machine guns. And I swing the door a little wide, and I'm looking at them. They go, hey, man, we're huge fans. And I was like, thank God, And Jen's waking up, she's going, who is that? What the fuck, Because there's two dudes in the doorway with machine guns leering at her husband and whatnot. And so I've been crossing the border. I know what it's generally like. And this time I'm like, I'm going to sit up front with you guys so they don't have to come look for me or anything like that. Get this over with quick so we can get up to Montreal, do the festival and shit. We get up to the border crossing and land, I think it's called Lansdowne, Ontario. Guy takes the passports and stuff. He's like, there's 3 passports. Where's the other person? I was like, oh, it's Thomas. He's in the back sleeping. I was like, can you get him? I said, all right, go get Thomas. Thomas comes out, waves, hello. And the guy goes, okay, you're a bus. I'm going to need you to pull over here into this other lane and just wait for further instructions. Like, it's all right, because it happens from time to time. Like, those dudes come on and want to say hi and shit. So I'm sitting there and whatnot. 3 dudes come. There's one looks like fucking Tom Cruise and taps. Like, he's ready to go, ready to get it on, man. Just like Hicks and fucking Alien and shit. Or Hudson, rather. So, open the door to him. He takes a half step into the bus and he goes, I smell dope. And I didn't know what to say because I don't lie. Like, I'm compulsively honest. So I was like, well, I enjoy marijuana, but there's none on this bus, officer. And he goes, I'm sure. Can you guys get off the bus, please? And I was like, all right. So we get off the bus and whatnot, and I'm wearing my pajamas and my slippers and a bathrobe and shit. We go outside, they ask our names, give them a passport. Do you have anything in your pockets or anything? Nothing. He's like, okay, you guys go into passport control, wait for us, we're gonna do the bus. I was like, yeah, feel free and shit. Went in, passport control, sat down and shit, looking around. People behind the counter are like nodding and shit, like a lot of little recognition, like, hey, it's that guy. I was like, hello. I'm sitting there, and I'm about 20 minutes, I start closing my eyes and shit, and then I hear the door. And I look over, and it's the guy, the fucking, the hotshot dude, ready to go and shit. And he's like, sir, can you stand up, please? And I thought he was talking to one of the other dudes, and then I noticed he was standing in front of me. I was like, me? And he's like, yeah, stand up. And I was like, oh, totally. I stood up. And he's like, can you turn around and face the wall, please? And I said, yeah, sure, I can totally do that. Yeah. And he's like, can you put your arm behind you, please, with your thumb out? And at this point, I'm like, this sounds like that moment in Cops before it clicked. And then suddenly, I was wearing a fucking bracelet. Dude literally slapped a bracelet on me and shit. And then he's like, give me the other hand. And I put it back. He clicked both on. And he goes, you're under arrest for smuggling. Come with me. We're going to put you in a cell. And I was like, what the fuck? Dude took me 3 feet. And he's like, okay, here's the cell. We're going to take the cuffs off now. I go, really? He goes, yeah, I think we could trust you. You're not giving me a hard time at all. I was like, how could I have given you a hard time in the 30 seconds we just met? He's like, I need you to lean against the wall. I got to pat you down. I was like, okay. And I lean against the wall on my head. And he's going, not on your head. He's going, get closer. I was like, okay. And he said, open your legs. I said, okay. And he said, lean. And I did this. And he goes, not with your head. I said, okay. So I leaned on my stomach instead. And he's going, just stand up. And I stood up. And then he starts patting me down and shit. And I've been patted down in fucking airport and places like that, but never like this. This was the serious pat down where he literally lifted my boob and went like this under it, like on that line that never sees the light of day. Where all the deep sea animals live, like right in the Mariana Trench down here and shit. Picked the other one up, looked under that, picked up my gut, like, and shit. And I got excited because I was like, we gonna drop it on some fucker's head, like Malcolm? Dude literally fucking picked up my gut and shit like that and was feeling under it, like where it hangs over and whatnot. Then he reached down to my crotch and he starts going hardcore, man. And I'm not kidding, I'm not exaggerating. Like this right here, he was doing it big time. Digging, going into my taint and shit, or my las pusas, if you will. Digging over here to the side, moving leg flab to touching the line and shit like that. I've been married almost 12 years. My wife never touched me this good. This dude was up in my shit hardcore. And then fine, I'm talking about a good minute-long frisk of this one area. And nothing untoward. He wasn't like, I love dick, you know that? Like, nothing like that. very professional and shit, but he's doing this every nook and cranny, and then he stops cupping it like this. Kind of the way, like, when I follow my wife up a staircase, I put my hand between her legs and cup her pussy. Like, just as like, I love you, and I love touching your pussy, that kind of thing. This dude was doing it from this side, not from behind me. He literally had my junk cupped, and I swear to you, he goes, "What is this?" And like, I was like, what do I do in this moment? Do I play a scared straight dude, or do I give him the right answer, or do I fucking be myself? And I was like, I gotta honor myself, be myself. And I was like, it's my dick. And he goes, oh, okay, sorry. And he takes his hand away. And if I wasn't so fucking scared, man, or terrified that I was gonna be arrested and shit, I definitely would have just asked the guy flat out, like, does it not feel like a dick? Like, in the middle of this, like possibly the worst moment of my life, like suddenly the dude gave me more shit to deal with. He's like, you're under arrest for smuggling, and guess what? What you have doesn't count as a dick. This is the dick chart. You're nowhere on this chart. Are you smuggling a dick into the country? Because I see no evidence of it here, So the dude takes my cuffs off, and I sit down. He's going, you're being arrested for smuggling. I said, I don't know anything about it. He goes, you might want to tell that to your lawyer. Would you like us to call someone? I said, yeah, it is my lawyer, John Sloss. And they go to call him. Another guy comes in. He's like, hey, I'm with immigration. Based on the Geneva Convention stuff, I'm supposed to ask you, do you want to call somebody from the U.S. Embassy? And I go, and I'm sweating fucking bullets, man, because I'm like Kafka at this moment. It's Kafkaesque. I don't know what's going on. Like, I don't know why I'm being arrested. And all I could think in that cell, as I was sitting there, as they're talking to me and shit like that, I was like, what did they find on the bus? Did they find my fleshlight? Like, is that it? They were like, what's this? Hey, there's a hidden pussy in here. He's smuggling pussy. And then I was hoping they didn't find it because I'd used it and didn't clean it out. And then I was sitting there fantasizing about the guy going, what's this? Just kind of hoping for an Elmer Fudd type thing, right? But I'm like, what the fuck smuggled? What are they talking about? I have no idea and shit. So the dude, they closed me into the cell. They're like, we'll be back. We're going to bring out the dogs and go over the bus thoroughly. I was like, okay. I'm sitting there and I'm just thinking, wow, life's about to irrevocably change. Like, everything's going to be different, man. And in that moment, I was getting panicked, and the weed part of me took over. And there was something in my head that goes, hey, man, everything's going to be fine. And I was like, is it weedy? And they were like, yeah, don't worry about it, because if you get out of this, it'll make a great story for the Q&A. So I was like, yeah, and then I got calm and shit and relaxed. And the door would open every 5 to 10 minutes. And a tall guy with a machine gun, Canadian dude, would be like, you okay in here? And I was like, yeah, I'm really okay. He's like, can I get you some water? I said, yeah, I'll take some water. And go away, come back with Dixie cups of water given to me and shit. He's like, okay, close the door and shit. And I'd sit there, drink my water. 10 minutes later, he opened the door. He's like, are you okay? And I was like, yeah, man, I'm good. He's like, you need anything? I was like, can you let me go? He's like, no. I was like, okay, I'm good. And he closed the door and shit. Sat there drinking my water, thinking about, like, how am I going to explain this to my wife and kid and blah, blah, blah. Door opens up, and it's the dude again. He's like, you all right? And I was like, yeah, man, I'm totally fine, man. What's going on? He's like, well, as per the Geneva Convention, you're American, we're Canadians. We have to ask you all the time if you're okay. We have to periodically check in on you. Make sure you're not doing any harm to yourself. And I was like, oh, no, I would never do something like that. He's like, yeah, but just to be sure, can we have your slippers, please? And I was like, Mike, they don't even have laces in them, dude. Like, I can't I hang myself with a pair of low-cut Uggs. Like, there's no way. They're just furry. He's like, yeah, it's a standard procedure. And I gave him my shit and shit. They closed the door. They open the door again. They're like, the lawyer's on the phone. I get up, go talk to my lawyer, John Sloss. And I'm like, man, I'm in jail. And he's like, yeah, I gathered that much. And I was like, what are we going to do? He's like, well, I'm going to get somebody up there to kind of intervene. I'm an entertainment lawyer, so I don't know what to tell you and shit. He's going, I can negotiate this if it turns into a movie deal, but... So he's like, I'm gonna find this guy. He's the best in Canada. He'll be your defense. He'll be calling next. I'll go back to my cell. They come out. They come get me again. They're like, this dude, Eddie Greenspan, is on the phone. I said, okay. I go over and talk to Eddie Greenspan. Eddie goes, first off, just to reassure you, just so you're feeling okay, you're not gonna go to jail. I was like, oh, okay, that's good. He's like, they're probably gonna come tell you that they found about 8.5 grams of what could be an alleged marijuana-type substance. And I go, they found weed? And he goes, shut up. I said, he said, it's alleged, but they're going to tell you soon. And I'm pretty sure they're going to tell you that everything's going to be okay. I'm going to give you a call back in 5 minutes and shit. And I hung up and went back to my room and shit. Dude comes into the room and he goes, he's holding this canister. And he's going, okay, we did a search on the bus, brought the dogs on, and we found this. He's holding up this kind of canister, and it's got some stuff in it, kind of crumpled up at the bottom, looks like weed and shit like that. Also has a little straw in it. And so I was like, oh man, because I kind of recognized it. It wasn't mine, but I knew that it had been on the bus months before. And there was a moment when my kid was coming on the bus with her friends to show him the bus. And I saw my weed sitting there. I was like, oh fuck, man, can you hide this to somebody? And they hid it, and I forgot it. So as I crossed the border, they went on the bus, and they were like, what's this then? And I was like, well, I know what it is, but I don't know what it's doing here, man. I said, I don't know. And I'm like, I don't know if I should. He's going, is this yours? And I go, I don't think I should answer that, right? In moments like this, you're not supposed to do that? He goes, maybe. He goes, let me ask you this. He's going, do you know what this is? And I go, I think it's marijuana. He goes, how do you know that? I was like, I could smell it from here. And he goes, okay, but what I want to know about is there's a straw in here. And he opens it up. He's like, what's this straw for? And it's a straw. It's about this big. It looks like a regular drinking straw that's been cut in half. And if you look at it, it looks unsavory, like a Coke straw. It looks like maybe like, hey, man, I do lots of blow on the bus. But it comes inside the cone, the pre-rolled wrapping paper that I use for weed. Basically, the straw's in it to keep it open. Pour the weed in, use the straw to tamp it down, twist it closed. You're good to go. You start smoking, you're high, you're a god. So anyway... I said, I'm not sure, but if I had to guess, I think that straw would be used for tamping weed down in a cigarette of some sort, if I had to guess. And he goes, well, what else is this straw used for? And I was like, I have no idea. He's going, well, what if I test it? And I was like, I'm sure you'd find nothing. He's going, are you snorting marijuana with this straw? And I said, like I said, I don't even know whose that is, but I'm shocked that it's here and whatnot. And he goes, okay, well, I'm going to test the straw, and if there's something on it, you might want to tell me about it right now. I said, what would be on it? I test it, dude. I don't even know what that is. And he's just like, well, I did test it already. And he's like, it tested positive for ecstasy, eh? And I was just like, I don't know anyone that does ecstasy. He's like, I thought you said this wasn't yours. And I was like, oh. I said, yeah, it's not mine. And he's going, okay, we're going to tear that bus apart. Is there any hidden safes in there? Anything you want to tell me about? And I was like, no, dude, I didn't even know that shit was there. And she was like, all right. He leaves. Eddie Greenspan calls. They bring me over to the other cell. He's like, everything's fine. Don't worry. They found 8.5 grams of weed. You're not going to be charged. Don't worry. They're going to tell you in 2 minutes. Have a good trip up to Montreal. Goodbye. And I was like, if I just held out for a little while longer, I would have saved myself a lot of money on lawyers, right? So I'm sitting there going, oh, fuck. I'm sitting in the cell. Cop comes back in with the container and shit like that. And he's like, okay, I'm going to tell you what's going on. We found 8.5 grams of a substance that's alleged to be marijuana in the bus. We're not going to press charges. It's not an actionable offense. It doesn't need to involve the Canadian Criminal Code. But there will be a fine leveled. And I was like, against me? He's like, no, against the bus. And I was like, why the bus? He's like, because the bus was in possession of the weed. I said, fair enough, Eddie Greenspan is good, man. So the other dude who is like the immigration dude, he comes in and shit, and he had asked me if they wanted me to call the consulate. In a moment of panic, I was like, yeah, call the U.S. And luckily, he was like, he didn't do it. He was just like, normally, in this situation, something like this, people don't. I could tell that you were kind of not really accustomed to this. I was like, no, I've never been arrested before. This is awesome. He was like, yeah. He's going, but would you like to speak to the woman from the consulate? I was like, yeah, very briefly. And she's like, Mr. Smith, are you okay? What are the Canadians doing to you? I was like, they've been great, man. They've been super cool, really nice. Give me lots of Dixie cups full of water and shit like that. Like at one point I pressed my luck. Dude opened the door. He's like, you good? You want anything? And I was like, do you have any donuts? And he goes, why would we have donuts? And I was like, well, you're Canadian and you're kind of cops. And he's going, we ate them all already. So I was like, these guys treated me really great and shit like that. Don't worry, everything's copacetic and stuff. And she's like, well, they're going to let you into the country? And I was like, oh, shit, I hadn't thought of that. And I asked the immigration dude, I was like, are you guys going to let me in for that gig up in Montreal? And he's like, yeah. He's going, yeah, you're considered a significant benefit to the country of Canada. And I... So I said, buddy, you got to say that again, but say it slower, because I got to memorize this. What did you call me? He's gone, a significant benefit to Canada. I was like, what does that mean? He's like, well, you come up, you tell stories, and people think you're funny, and that's good, and that's, we welcome that sort of thing up there. I was like, can you put that on a piece of paper and send it to my mother? She would love that. She'd be like, I always knew you were special. Kind of thing. So then the dude who was the hotshot dude, the dude who had started it all with like, I smell dope and shit. He came in to talk to me. He sits down with me. He's like, okay, everyone explain what's going on here. I said, yeah. He's going, so there's going to be a fine, $220 or something like that. You pay that and you're going to be free to go and you just need to sign here and here. And I said, thanks, man. Thanks a lot. It was really cool. And he goes, I just wanted to tell you that I didn't know who you were when we arrested you. And I was like, oh, dude, don't fucking worry about that. That's your job to arrest people, scumbags who bring drugs to Canada and stuff. You don't have to apologize. He goes, I wasn't apologizing. I was trying to explain to you, I didn't know who you were. I didn't arrest you because of who you are. I just arrested you because I smelled dope. And I was like, fair enough, man, fair enough. Thanks a lot. And they let me fucking back on the bus, and we hightailed up to Montreal and shit. And that was it. It was the end of my smuggling experience. But it came on the fucking heels of almost getting busted by the cops in Los Angeles as well. But not for weed and shit like that. I was at home in Los Angeles, in my house, room over here, office down there. Wife's sitting on the couch, I'm sitting on a bed and shit, and we're talking about Red State. And I was just like, we're getting closer now. It's bound to happen. She's finally read it. After 3 years, she gave it a read and shit. And she's like, who's going to play Aben Cooper as the bad reverend in the movie and shit, the bad guy? And I go, Michael Parks, the actor Michael Parks. She's like, who's that? I was like, that's a dude from Dusk Till Dawn, the opening like 10 minutes of From Dusk Till Dawn. He's fucking amazing and shit. She's like, I don't remember that. I was like, really? I just got the Blu-ray. Let me get the Blu-ray. And in my room, as I've said before, 103-inch television in my room. Very large TV that Panasonic gave me and shit. It's real cool because you walk up to it and it's like life-size. As I've said before, I put in Live Free or Die Hard and just stood next to myself. And it was sad because I was fatter than on screen. And I was like, oh shit, I gained weight. So the TV's very big. It's just like watching a movie like in your house and shit like that. So I put on the opening 10 minutes of From Dusk Till Dawn and shit, and you're all familiar with it, the Gecko Brothers. First, Michael Parks comes in, everything's copacetic, he goes to the shitter. The Gecko Brothers emerge with George Clooney and Quentin, and they're threatening the guy behind him. If you say anything, we're gonna kill this fucking chick. He's like, I'm not saying anything, tense standoff. Michael Parks comes back out and shit, says a few words. Quentin fucking shoots him. All hell breaks loose. They start fighting. People are screaming for help and shit. It's going fucking crazy. The hostage crisis situation gone awry and shit. Excellent opening 10 minutes to the movie. Balls to the wall. All of a sudden, door knock at our door, our bedroom and shit. And I was, who is it? It was Harley. It's Harley. And I was like, all right. So we pause it because we don't let her watch R-rated shit. Not like that. We'll show her movies where people say things, but not where people do things, because we don't believe in bad language in our house. It's like no such thing as bad language. Bad language pays for your fucking salary, in this house. So anyway, she knocks, comes into the room and whatnot, pause. We're talking to her, and she's over by the couch talking to Jen. I'm laying on the bed waiting for the movie to start again. And Harley starts kind of looking out the windows, like Jen's over here, and she's looking out the windows while she's talking to Jen. And Jen's like, what are you doing? Get away from the windows. You're all creepy like your father. And Charlie's like, what do you mean? She's like, your father does the same thing. He's always got to know what's going on outside. He's always looking out, who's that on the window and shit like that. And Harley goes, well, I just saw Raina talking to somebody. And I was like, really? Who is that over there? I climb out and get off the bed, and I'm looking out the window with Harley and shit. And I look out, and I see Raina talking to a police officer. Raina is our housekeeper. And all of a sudden, the police officer looks up at me. And I was like, waving at him. And he goes, do you live here? I said, yeah. He goes, can you come down here right now and open this door? I said, yeah, did you guys ring the bell? And he goes, did you ring the bell? And then suddenly somebody steps out in the street. It's another cop. And he goes, no, I didn't ring the bell. Come down right now. And I was like, okay. And so I back away from the window, and I'm like, there's a fucking cop out there yelling at me and shit. Maybe it ain't so creepy to look out the windows every once in a while. And she's like, a cop? What are you talking about? And fucking like, I don't know. There's a cop. He wants me to come down and shit. I had just ordered Baja Fresh. I picked it up as well, Baja Fresh, Mexican place and whatnot. Harley had just returned home with her two friends. They'd gone to the movies with Raina. So I came back with Baja Fresh for everybody and shit. And those cops scared me. But I was like, shit, I got to seem cool because I'm really fucking stoned right now. So I want to seem cool and calm and casual, so I pick up a container of chicken and bring it with me. Nothing wrong could be going on if this man's holding a container of chicken, I just want to seem casual as possible, throw on my robe, grab the chicken and shit, go open the door, and there's Harley's two friends standing in our doorway going like, the police are pointing at us in the window and going like this. Should we climb out the windows? I was like, not yet, hold on. Let's find out. And Jen's going, well, out the windows. We go downstairs and shit. Get to the top of the steps. There's about 4 or 5 steps descend to our front door and shit, in the foyer and whatnot. And as I'm getting to the front door, Raina's emerging from the garage. And Raina's English is like broken at best, to say the least. I was like, Raina, what do the cops want? She goes, it's okay, Mr. Kevin, it's okay. And I was like, what the fuck's that mean, man? So anyway, Raina said it was okay, must be okay and shit. So I go to open the door. Behind me is my wife, my child, her two friends, and Raina at the top of the steps. And as I open the door, the first thing I see are 2 of LA's finest in blues go like this. Hand on their hip, the little latch thing that keeps your gun open. And one hand extended out to me, and the guy's going, how many people in the house? And I go, oh shit, like I didn't know there was gonna be math on the quiz. I said, let me see, there's me, there's my wife, there's Harley, her 2 friends, Raina right now, I think there's 6 in the house. He's like, come outside, can you step outside right now, please? I said, yeah, totally. And we come outside, and he's like, can you step over here, please? I said, yeah, and they're separating the kids from us. And my kid starts getting really emotional. She's like, what's going on? And I was like, I don't know, I'm sure everything's fine. He's like, what's going on, hon? Are you okay? Are you upset? What's the matter with these people? And I'm like, these people? What are you talking about? And then one cop comes up to me, he's like, we got a call for an emergency. Somebody was calling for help inside the house, that they were being held hostage. And I was like, you're kidding me, man. No. I said, I just literally went and got Baja Fresh. You can see I'm holding chicken. I said, the kids, they just got back from seeing a movie and shit. I don't know who would have made the call. And I immediately turned to the kids, you fucking call the cops. One of the kids, not my kid, who was falling to pieces and shit, the other girl was like, no way, man, we would never do that. I'm serious. We have nothing to do. Like, she could see that I was like, this better not be a fucking joke. The cops are here. And she's like, no, we didn't. I was like, officer, they said they didn't call the cops. I didn't call the cops. My wife didn't call the cops. Raina didn't call the cops. Like, nothing. We're the only ones here. And then another cop comes over and goes, it didn't come from inside the house. Somebody was walking down your hill. They heard somebody expressly screaming for help, and they called us, and that's why we're here. Now, what's going on in there? And I go, wait, somebody outside the house? He goes, yeah. I go, are you guys looking for the fucking Gecko brothers by any chance? And he goes, what are you talking about? And I was just like, guys, I have a 103-inch television, man, and it's very fucking loud. And I was talking to my wife, I was showing her the opening from Dusk Till Dawn, and that is a hostage situation with gunplay and people screaming for help and shit like that. And the older cop turns to the younger cop, he goes, is this true? And the younger cop goes, yeah, it was the best part of the movie, boss. So I'm like, I said, I swear to you, it's just the TV, man. And he's just like, well, we got to make sure of that. You understand? I was like, yeah, totally. Do what you got to. But the whole time I'm thinking, did I leave weed on my desk? Because what they're doing now is moving into the house. They tell us, we're going to move into the house and check it out. Because as far as they know, we're outside going, everything's fine. And somebody's right behind the door with a gun to our other kid going like, they better not fuck up. You know, that their training tells them to go in, clear the fucking house. So the dude's like, we're going to go in and clear the house, make sure everything's copacetic. And I was like, oh, shit. And I'm starting to think about all the Law and Order I've ever watched. And I'm like, if they find weed while they're trying to make sure we're not getting killed in the house, can I get arrested for that? And trying to like think and do the math in my head. And all of a sudden I look down the hill. There's 2 cop cars there. Up the hill, there's another cop car. We have 12 cops in blue outside of our house. And our neighbors are starting to emerge from their house, including the Cherrywood couple. And you could see him looking at us going, I knew it. Stoner, you know. And so finally, like, traffic is starting to come down our hill, and they're slowing and looking at us. It's only a matter of time before TMZ shows up. So I said to the one guy, dude in charge, I was like, officer, I don't know how to say this, but like, this is my house. Can we just go inside in the foyer though? Because my neighbors are starting to like, look, this is kind of embarrassing. I'm out here in bathrobe. I'm still holding this chicken, you know, clearly. And he's like, yeah, okay, let's move you all into the foyer. And Harley is like really full crying now. She's like, she doesn't know what the fuck's going on and shit. And so I'm holding Harley, and the one cop keeps going, why are you so upset, hon? Are you okay? And I was just like, yeah, she's totally fine. He's like, I wasn't talking to you, sir. And he's like, do you live here, hon? And she's like, I do. And I was like, yeah, she does. And right behind us in the foyer is a 9-foot portrait of Harley. Massive. Fucking thing is huge and shit. So I'm like, yeah, look, dude, that's her. Like this, that's her like 5 years ago. This is her house. And he goes, oh, I'm sure she lives here. And I was like, you don't think I live here? And I was like, shit, where's my 9-foot painting? And there was none. So I was like, wait a second, man, over there in the bookshelf, there's a little picture of me and that lady kissing this girl. And he looks and he's like, yeah, his house. And the other cop recognized me, and some of the other cops did as well. But meanwhile, one cop's making his way up the steps to my second floor. And if he hits the second floor of my house, he's gonna hit a fucking wave of THC. It just lingers right outside my office. He'd get up to the top and be like, ugh, and just pass out and shit. So I'm like, oh, I hope he doesn't go up the steps. He's starting to make the move up the steps. But mercifully, my wife, my wonderful God lover, beautiful wife, who fucks like a demon, but she's a wonderful human being. My beautiful wife, years and years ago, when we first moved into the house, she's like, I'm going to start Family Wall. And I was like, what's Family Wall? She's like, I'm going to put all these pictures about our family up this hallway and up this hallway. It's going to tell the story of our lives. And I was like, oh, that sounds like a lot of work and shit. You don't have to do anything. I said, okay, that sounds good. And it's amazing. It's wonderful. I like to get stoned and just stare at Family Wall. You know, it's just like you get to watch our lives develop and shit like that. Mercifully, she built Family Wall because the officer is on the 3rd step and he goes, oh, he lives here, you know, because there's me in every picture and a couple news articles and shit. So he's like, I think we're good. And he starts backing down the stairs. And I'm like, thank God, thank God, thank God, thank God. So the dude comes over and he's just like, everything copacetic then? I said, yeah. He's like, sorry, we just have to follow procedure. I was like, dude, you don't have to apologize. You come to my house, force me out of it anytime you want. Make sure there are no killers lurking behind closets. You know, you want to check the toilet for sharks, feel free. Like, you're the LAPD. You guys do what you want and shit. He was like, right on. We assist you we thank you for your assistance. Sorry to bother you. I was like, thanks. They left. We closed the door and shit. And Jen looks at me and I was like, so anyway, Michael Parks is the guy who's going to be in Red State. I've spent a lot of lovely time with you people, but it's going to be very much time to go soon. But did I answer your one question? Well, it's called Q&A. 1Q, 1A. After the year I had, ladies and gentlemen, even though it is my birthday, I think it would be terribly, terribly irresponsible of me to be thinking about cake at this time. After the Too Fat to Fly thing, I've kind of given up some sweets. I'm not desperately trying to lose weight, but I am watching my figure a little bit more. So even though I am 40, and I've made it 40 years on this earth, the idea of fucking having cake right now, I don't need to be photographed publicly shoving fucking cake into my mouth ever again. So we were going to completely do away with doing a cake and shit. And then I remembered, in this life, if you don't celebrate yourself, nobody will. So I asked them to make me a cake, and they did. Thank you for coming out tonight. You guys have been such a great fucking audience. Thank you for the first 40 years. Hopefully we get another 40. I love you all. I love you, Mom. I love you, Jen. There's the pussy I came from. There's the pussy I'm going to tonight. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Good night.